Chapter 863. This cold mocking voice sounded, and it just happened to match Kai Linkong's arrogant words from before. The entire star domain seemed to have fallen into a dead silence. Many people could not help but stop what they were doing. This was especially the case on the other side. The foreign creatures' faces all carried expressions of horror, simply unable to believe what they were seeing. What did they just see? A boundary emperor prodigy was severely injured by a single attack. Although Kai Linkong was not as powerful as his brother Kai Hongyu, he was still one of the top figures among the foreign realm's younger generation. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill the Yama Emperor, a supreme outlawed prodigy. However, it was precisely this kind of top prodigy from the other side who was directly heavily injured by a single move. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the spatial crack. A white-robed figure with surging immortal light crossed over. It was Jun Xiaoyao. Behind him, Ling Yang, Meng Zhon, and the others followed closely. It's the Jun family's son of God. The son of God is here. As expected, I knew it. It must be the Jun family's son of God. Only he has the ability to do this. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's appearance, the celestial realm's morale was greatly boosted. The cultivators wore excited looks on their faces. After all, they had been suppressed too much previously. Even a supreme outlawed prodigy had fallen. Jun Xiaoyao's arrival was undoubtedly a boost to their morale. You're Jun Xiaoyao. Kai Linkong's face was distorted as he stared at Jun Xiaoyao. The anger in his eyes seemed to be able to burn the world. He hurriedly took out a medicinal pill and consumed it. A majestic spiritual essence surged, preventing half of his body from disintegrating. Moreover, it began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Jun Xiaoyao reached out his hand and slapped at the firehouse prison. Surging golden blood qi and monstrous dharmic powers surged like a tide. The firehouse prison was directly smashed to pieces. Jun Qingyan's beautiful figure appeared. Her snow-white skin was slightly cracked, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Overall, there was no danger to his life. This was also because she had only been trapped for a short period of time. If she had been trapped for a little longer, it would be hard to say. Thank you, Brother Xiaoyao, for saving me. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao retract his hand, Jun Qingyang also bowed solemnly. At the same time, there was a complicated look in her eyes. Jun Xiaoyao clearly did not hold any grudges against the hidden lineage. However, the hidden lineage had such harsh requirements for Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Qingyang could not help but feel indignant for Jun Xiaoyao. It's fine. Let me handle this, Jun Xiaoyao said. He turned to look at Kai Linkong. Kai Linkong's expression was very ugly. It was not only because Jun Xiaoyao had injured him. It was also because he had just said that the Jun family was only at this level. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao had ruthlessly slapped his face. Not only that, but he also retaliated with double the damage. Jun Xiaoyao, son of the white-clothed killing god, even your father has fallen in the hands of the Scarlet Owl King, let alone you. Kai Linkong said coldly. The blood in his body surged. There were also faint wisps of black qi. That was the power of the dark matter. Kai Linkong's body also recovered very quickly. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were extremely cold and indifferent. The one guarding the alien domain is just one of my father's 3 pure ones. Even if it's just a clone, I don't think it will lose to the Scarlet Owl King. How dare you? Kai Linkong shouted. It was just like Jun Wuhui's prestige in the Jun family. The Scarlet Owl King was also the king of the Scarlet Owl race. He was the symbol of the spirit and naturally could not be blasphemed. Whoosh! Kai Linkong attacked again. The red wings on his back shook, and 100,000 red sword feathers fell and swept toward Jun Xiaoyao. Each sword feather was capable of destroying a star. Jun Xiaoyao used his finger as a sword. Stalks of 9-leaf sword grass appeared in the void. As the leaves shook, the sword energy was as thick as a mountain. It slashed out horizontally. The sword light illuminated heaven and earth, illuminating the dark universe. When Jun Xiaoyao attacked, his aura was immediately detected by everyone. This, the Son of God, has broken through to the Holy Lord realm. The warriors on the immortal domain side were a little stunned. How long had it been, And Jun Xiaoyaro had broken through? Brother Xiaoyaro has actually broken through to the Holy Lord realm. Jun Qingyang was also surprised and happy. Jun Xiaoyaro could be said to be the face of the Jun family now. Holy Lord realm, the reincarnated Arhat Di also took a deep look at Jun Xiaoyaro. Waves surged in his heart. He was the reincarnation of an ancient almighty. Sometimes, he really wondered if Jun Xiaoyaro was the reincarnation of a certain celestial emperor. This cultivation speed was simply too fast. Compared to the exclamations of the immortal domain, the expressions of the foreign creatures were extremely ugly. Especially Kai Lingkong. He could only feel a majestic sword Dao pressure pressing down on him. There was a flash of blood. Half of his scarlet wing had been chopped off. Fire Mansion World Burning Prison. Kai Lingkong roared and used his ultimate move. A sea of fire spread behind him, and a terrifying avatar of all living beings wailing appeared. The boundless sea of fire wrapped around Jun Xiaoyaro like a curtain. Brother Xiaoyaro, be careful. Jun Qingyang shouted. She had been hit by this move before. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. He stretched out his finger and drew a cross in the void. Instantly, the void shattered. A great destruction cross appeared. It was the chaotic sky secret technique, cross starfield intersection. Rip. Like a piece of paper being torn, the sea of fire was directly torn apart. Sparks flew everywhere. Jun Xiaoyaro appeared right before Kai Lingkong in a flash as if he had teleported, slapping him with a simple slap. Pa. Kai Lingkong was sent flying again. Countless bones in his body were broken. Stop. A quasi-supreme from the Scarlet Owl race shouted and reached out to suppress Jun Xiaoyaro. Do you really think we don't exist? Meng Zhon also attacked. All of you, attack. Kai Lingkong was embarrassed and angry. Jun Xiaoyao's strength was completely different from the other prodigies of the immortal domain. Seeing this, the prodigies of the Ghost Eye Royal Race and Nether Shadow Royal Race charged forward. The crack between the Ghost Eye Royal Race prodigies' eyebrows opened. A terrifying black light appeared and pierced through the void. It was like the light of death. The Nether Shadow Royal Race prodigy blended into the shadows and swept over with a 1,000-foot shadow blade. It could be said that these foreign prodigies were all very strong. However, in front of Jun Xiaoyaro, they were still ants. Jun Xiaoyao's chest released an incomparably bright light. The light of heaven tribulation was used and collided with the light of death of the Ghost Eye Royal Race's light of death. Thousands of streaks of divine light and tens of thousands of runes. The Ghost Eye Royal Race prodigy let out a miserable cry. His body was directly turned into ashes in the dazzling divine light. At the same time, the Nether Shadow Royal Race prodigy slashed at Jun Xiaoyaro with his shadow blade. However, he was shocked to find that the moment the shadow blade got close to Jun Xiaoyaro, it was directly annihilated into nothingness. Magic power immunity. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at him as if he was looking at an inanimate object. He threw a punch. Splat. Blood splattered. The Nether Shadow Royal Race prodigy died. This type of direct and efficient method left all of the foreign creatures incomparably shocked, feeling chills run down their throats. This. Kai Lingkong was completely stunned. His body was shattered, and his battle intent was completely gone. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro killed the other royal prodigies. 10 geniuses of the royal families perished by Jun Xiaoyao's hand in less than a quarter of an hour. You must die today. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes locked onto Kai Lingkong. From the moment he shouted and slandered Jun Wuhui, he was destined to die. Damn it. Kai Lingkong turned around and fled. The surrounding sacred leaders of the Scarlet Owl race protected him. As for the Quasi-Supremes, they were held back by the Grand Knights of the Celestial Realm. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro attacked again and wanted to kill him, there was a loud rumble. A shocking aura erupted. That aura was simply enough to destroy the heavens. Another divine obsession had been unsealed. Chapter 864. A mighty aura swept through the entire starfield. Terrifying ripples shook the void. The pressure surged like a tsunami, and countless stars were instantly destroyed. Some of the weaker ones were directly crushed into minced meat with a bang. Retreat. At this moment, whether it was the immortal region's side or the foreign realm side, they all started to retreat. A beautiful purple lotus bloomed in the starry sky. Waves of dark water vapor washed over it. A blurry figure in a purple robe stood on top of it like a water god. This was one of the 7 sins god's obsessions, the serene water purple lotus that represented the original sin of jealousy. Rumble. The rules of the divine ruins descended, limiting the serene water purple lotus's aura to the quasi-supreme realm. However, it was still terrifying to the extreme. Just the pressure alone killed who knew how many people. However, the serene water purple lotus clearly had no intention of tangling with these ants. Its sole purpose was to combine the 7 original sins into one and transform them into the most powerful evil will of the gods. Let's go. Now that the evil will had broken the seal, no one had any reason to continue fighting here. They all retreated. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were cold and indifferent. He took a step forward and continued to chase after Kai Lingkong, who had already run far away. In the pitch-black starry sky, several streaks of scarlet light flashed. It was the terrified Kai Lingkong and the Scarlet Owl race's sacred lords who were protecting him. Damn it, why is the Zhun family full of monsters? This Zhun Xiaoyao, unless my brother comes, it will be difficult to defeat him. Kai Lingkong was extremely embarrassed. This was the first time he was in such a sorry state. In the distance, a huge immortal slaughtering sword chi swept over, as if it was cutting through the void. A Scarlet Owl race's sacred lord turned around to block. However, with a pucci, half of his body was cut off, and blood splattered everywhere. When Kai Lingkong saw this scene, he was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He quickly fled. Can you run? Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was cold, like a cat playing with a mouse. If he decided to kill someone, there was no way they could survive. Zhun Xiaoyao had killed sacred lords when he was at the Great Sage Realm. Now that he was at the Sacred Lord Realm, these sacred lords were naturally no match for him. In just 2 or 3 moves, they were all wiped out. Kai Lingkong's face was as pale as paper. He had never thought that he would have such a day. Forced into a desperate situation, he could only grit his teeth and use a life-saving move. Heaven Soul Disintegration, he shouted. Kai Lingkong's fleshly body actually exploded on its own. All of the flesh and blood turned into energy that wrapped around the primordial spirit and fled at an extremely fast speed. However, Zhun Xiaoyao, who saw what happened, had a look of surprise in his eyes. What he was surprised about was not Kai Lingkong's methods. Instead, it was the person who did this that made him feel a familiar fluctuation. The 9 great heavenly books. This fluctuation is from the Book of Souls, one of the 9 great heavenly books. Zhun Xiaoyao thought to himself. If one were to say that the Physique book of the 9 great heavenly tomes was a manifestation of the ultimate Tao of the fleshly body, the Soul book was the ultimate manifestation of the Tao of the primordial spirit. In ancient times, there were cultivators who obtained soul books to cultivate. In the end, they abandoned their physical bodies and used their primordial spirits to prove their Tao and undergo heavenly tribulations. In the end, his primordial spirit became a martial emperor. A single thought was enough to turn the sea into a mulberry field. However, the Book of Souls isn't with him. Someone must have taught him the escape method of the primordial spirit from the Book of Souls, Zhun Xiaoyao speculated. He immediately came to a conclusion. Kai Lingkong had an elder brother called Kai Hongyu. Could it be that the Book of Souls of the 9 great heavenly books was in his hands? At first, Zhun Xiaoyao thought he might be able to find all of the heavenly books on the ultimate ancient path and claim the heavenly books. However, it turned out that Zhun Xiaoyao had underestimated the situation. Not all of the 9 great heavenly books were in the 9 heavens immortal realm. The outer realm, the burial ground, the 9 heavens, etc., might have traces of the heavenly books. If that's the case, the Book of Souls is most likely in the hands of the Crimson Owl tribe of the outer realm. Should I pay the outer realm a visit? Zhun Xiaoyao murmured. While he was thinking, a strange fluctuation of the space under his feet shook. He took a step forward and chased after Kai Lingkong as if he had shrunk the ground into an inch. The Book of Space had given Zhun Xiaoyao incredible control of the space Tao. It was simply outstanding when it was used to boost his speed. On the other hand, Kai Lingkong was terrified when he saw Jun Xiaoyaro chasing after him. How is this possible? I can't even shake him off. Kai Lingkong's primordial spirit was about to fall into despair. As Kai Lingkong was immersed in despair, he suddenly heard the sound of music. It was quite strange. The world of the ruins of God was supposed to be a bloody battlefield. It was a cruel world filled with blood and fire. However, the sound of the music lingered in the air. It was extremely pleasant and tugged at one's heartstrings. The pleasant sound did not match the battlefield at all. Jun Xiaoyaro frowned. Deep in the universe, a beautiful figure playing a guzheng appeared. It was a woman in her 20s in a long dress with flowing sleeves. Her figure was slender and light, as if it was carved out of jade. Her eyebrows were curved, her eyes were glittering, and her nose was sharp. Her skin was as white as snow, as if it was glowing. A red string was tied around her snow-white wrist. The woman was indeed very beautiful. Her eyes and eyebrows had a hint of charm. However, there were two things that exposed her identity. 2 fox ears poked out from her smooth and silky hair. She also had 9 furry fox tails on her hips. A fox-eared girl? Jun Xiaoyaro was rather surprised. It was not his first time encountering a fox spirit. Bai Mai of the heavenly fox tribe was also a fox. The 9 heavens immortal realm also had the Archean royalty and the 9-tailed fox tribe. However, the woman before him was obviously not from the 9-tailed fox tribe of the immortal realm. Kai Lingkong's primordial spirit was overjoyed when it saw the woman. It yelled, "Third princess of Tushan, please save me." Jun Xiaoyao's eyes glittered when he heard the words. Tushan? She was from the immortal emperor tribe of the foreign realm. However, the third princess did not seem to have much of a reaction. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and was about to kill Kai Lingkong. Kai Lingkong's face twisted when he saw this. He snapped, "Third princess, my brother once went to Tushan to ask for your hand in marriage. Even though he was rejected in the end, at least we're still related, right?" The third princess was still unmoved. Puff. Jun Xiaoyaro threw his palm forward. Kai Lingkong fell to the ground in despair. He never thought the third princess would leave him in the lurch even though they were both from the foreign realm. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the third princess of Tushan after slapping Kai Lingkong to death like a fly. He had heard of the Tushan tribe before. Just like the Qingqiu tribe, they were one of the 2 main factions of the fox tribe. "It seems like the foreign realm isn't as united as you think," Jun Xiaoyaro said. "His older brother is just very annoying," the third princess said, her voice soft and charming. To Jun Xiaoyao's surprise, most foxes were seductive and charming. And this third princess seemed to be one of the clear streams among them. "You must be the famous son of God of the Jun family, Jun Xiaoyaro. I'm Tushan Xiaoxiao of the Tushan tribe." Tushan Xiaoxiao smiled gently. The corners of her eyes and the tips of her brows revealed a light and charming charm. "If you want to fight, I, the son of God, will accompany you to the end," Jun Xiaoyaro said calmly with his hands behind his back. He would not show mercy to Tushan Xiaoxiao just because she was a woman. "Please listen to my song." Tushan Xiaoxiao pursed her lips and smiled. Her slender fingers played the guzheng in front of her. The sound of the guzheng was like a spring, making people feel as if they were trapped in a dream. It was as if there were countless aureoles circling around her, making people fall into a trance. Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't help but laugh when he saw this. In terms of music, he didn't lose to anyone. Jun Xiaoyaro sat cross-legged in the air and took out a 7-stringed guzheng. It was the Phoenix Cry Chishan guzheng. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro take out the guzheng, Tushan Xiaoxiao was surprised. Could it be that the son of God of the Jun family of the immortal realm not only had extraordinary talent and strength, but also unparalleled talent? Was there such a perfect man in the world? Chapter 865. Jun Xiaoyaro, dressed in white, sat cross-legged in the air. The Phoenix Cry Chishan zither was placed between his knees. He looked extremely elegant, like a sage in the bamboo forest. "Since the third princess is in the mood, I will also play a song." Jun Xiaoyaro smiled, but there was a trace of coldness in his eyes. After being trained by Arju, coupled with his own talent. Zhun Xiaoyao's zither skills could be said to be the best of the generation. Competing with him in terms of musical attacks was undoubtedly like hitting a stone with an egg. Zhun Xiaoyao's slender fingers plucked the strings of the zither, and the sound of the zither spread out. At times, it was like a high mountain and flowing water, and at other times, it was like raging waves. At times, it was like a man with shining spears and armored horses, and at other times, it was like the faint rustling of the spring rain. It was simply a vivid interpretation of the art of the zither. In comparison, Tushan Xiaoxiao's zither music had reached a superb level. But compared to Zhun Xiaoyao, it was still inferior. In the beginning, Tushan Xiaoxiao could barely resist. Toward the end, she was basically playing the accompaniment for Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao's zither music was loud and sonorous. Her zither music was soft and gentle. Zhun Xiaoyao's zither music came wave after wave, reaching the climax. Tushan Xiaoxiao's zither music became more and more shrill, as if she had exhausted all her strength and became limp. In the end, it was almost Zhun Xiaoyao's home ground. Tushan Xiaoxiao's zither music was completely pressed to the ground, and she could only struggle helplessly. This made Tushan Xiaoxiao seem to be panting a little. A bright red blush also appeared on her snow-white exquisite face. Her musical talent could be said to be second to none among the younger generation of the foreign land. But now, she had lost to Zhun Xiaoyao. Looking at the peerless and talented man in white sitting in the void, Tushan Xiaoxiao's eyes flashed. A touch of demonic brilliance that did not match her temperament flashed in her beautiful eyes. Some kind of immortal scripture in her body was restless. "You have lost." Zhun Xiaoyao suddenly stopped playing the zither and said with a flat expression. "Yes, I lost." Tushan Xiaoxiao seemed to be absent-minded. Then, her lips curled into a seductive smile. She suddenly said, "Young Master Zhun may not know this, but this little girl had once made an oath that whoever could defeat this little girl in music would be qualified to become this little girl's husband." Hearing this, Zhun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change at all. Tushan Xiaoxiao was surprised again. In the other side, it was unknown just how many people were chasing after her. For example, Kai Lingkong's brother, Kai Hongyu. Although he did not explicitly say that he wanted to pursue her, he also wanted to find a partner among the 5 beauties of Tushan. Even someone as powerful as Kai Hongyu was willing to be a bootlicker and pay him a visit. It was not hard to imagine how popular Tushan family girls were in this world. However, even so, the white-robed son of God of the Zhun family of the immortal region didn't react at all. This was out of Tushan Xiaoxiao's expectations. "Do you really think that this son of God is so naive?" Zhun Xiaoyao said with a faint smile, but his tone was cold and playful. Of course, he didn't think that someone he met for the first time, especially the Tushan princess of the other side, would want to marry him. Zhun Xiaoyao's charm was indeed full. However, he wasn't so narcissistic that he thought that he could capture the heart of a beast-eared princess of the other side with just his zither skills. This Tushan Xiaoxiao must have her own thoughts and plans. "Young Master Zhun, do you not believe me?" Tushan Xiaoxiao lowered her beautiful eyes. The 2 fox beast ears on his head also softened and drooped down. Her appearance was extremely charming and pitiful. If someone with a beast-eared princess saw this, he might not be able to control himself. Cut the crap. Let this son of God see how capable the prodigy of the immortal emperor family of the other side is. Zhun Xiaoyao raised his hand and pressed down with vast dharmic powers. Seeing this, Tushan Xiaoxiao plucked the strings of the zither and sound waves surged out like a tide. The 2 of them immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. "Young Master Zhun, do you not believe me?" "I'm not lying," Tushan Xiaoxiao said as they fought. "This son of God doesn't lack a wife, but I do like to keep pets. You happen to be a 9-tailed fox. Why don't you be my pet?" Zhun Xiaoyao retorted and pressed down at the same time. Even Tushan Xiaoxiao was stunned when she heard this. She couldn't calm down. If someone dared to say such a thing in the other side, the Tushan clan wouldn't hesitate to attack. Tushan family didn't even need to do anything, because the other bootlickers would beat the one who talked to them to death. Only Zhun Xiaoyao dared to say that he would treat the Tushan 9-tailed fox as a pet. "Young Master Zhun, You must be joking. I'm choosing a husband, not a master, Tushan Xiaoxiao said. Unfortunately, I'm only interested in keeping female pet slaves. As for a wife, you're not worthy, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Tushan Xiaoxiao was speechless again. Even the peerless geniuses of the other immortal imperial clans treated them like the moon surrounded by the stars, holding them in high regard. It was the first time Tushan Xiaoxiao had seen Jun Xiaoyao's attitude in her life. It gave her a great shock. It's better to just surrender. Jun Xiaoyao's physical strength was unparalleled, and his combat prowess was even more terrifying. After all, he was someone who had fought the heart demon in close combat. He immediately locked on to Tushan Xiaoxiao's weakness, which was her fox tail. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and grabbed one of Tushan Xiaoxiao's fox tails. It was fluffy and nice to the touch. Tushan Xiaoxiao's delicate body trembled, and goosebumps appeared on her snow-white skin. She couldn't help but let out a cry, and her face flushed. The tail was one of the sensitive spots of the nine-tailed fox clan. It had a special meaning. Young Master Jun, you're too much. Tushan Xiaoxiao bit her moist red lips. It was a pure fox tail that had never been touched by anyone of the opposite sex. Swoosh! A beam of 9-colored light appeared on the fox's tail, bringing with it an aura of annihilation as it slashed at Jun Xiaoyaro like a sword. Jun Xiaoyaro retreated. It was the nine-tailed fox clan's innate ability, the nine-tailed apocalyptic light. It was extremely powerful. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro retreated, the red string on Tushan Xiaoxiao's snow-white wrist suddenly moved. An extremely thin red line appeared vaguely, wrapping itself around Jun Xiaoyao's wrist. Jun Xiaoyao's consciousness was very sharp, and he noticed this. However, this red line was faintly discernible, as if it was there but not there. It was like the red string of karma in Yu Laro's hand. It didn't bring any negative effects to Jun Xiaoyaro. Young Master Jun, we will meet again. Tushan Xiaoxiao looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with her beautiful eyes. Then, she twisted her waist, and her 9 tails wrapped around her body. She broke through the void and instantly disappeared into the distance. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't chase after her, because he knew that the prodigies of the immortal emperors from the other side wouldn't be as easy to kill as Kai Lingkong. Moreover, he had to conserve his energy to deal with the 7 sins god, the 7 emperors, and so on. He didn't have extra energy to deal with the Tushan third princess. What exactly is this? Jun Xiaoyaro frowned as he looked at the red thread on his wrist that seemed to be there but not there. Fortunately, this red string didn't affect him too much. The Tushan clan does have some secrets, but if you want to provoke the Son of God, you'd better be careful not to get burned. In terms of scheming, Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't afraid of anyone. If Tushan Xiaoxiao dared to set her eyes on him, he would let Tushan Xiaoxiao know what regret was. On the other side, Tushan Xiaoxiao's beautiful figure appeared in the starry sky of the universe. A strange smile appeared on her flawless jade-like face. What a perfect man. I can't find any flaws in him. The only bad thing is that his mouth is a bit poisonous. However, second sister might like this kind of style. Unfortunately, such a man is from the immortal realm. No wonder we sisters can't find a suitable partner in the other side and can't achieve our own improvement. Chapter 866. In Tushan Xiaoxiao's eyes, Kai Hongyu and the others could not be compared to Jun Xiaoyaro at all. Jun Xiaoyao's appearance, talent, and strength were all perfect, and his talent was unparalleled. He could easily crush her in the Guqin. In her eyes, this kind of man had almost no shortcomings except that he was a little cunning. I have to get him. It will be very helpful to me and even to my sisters. Tushan Xiaoxiao subconsciously raised her jade-like hand and looked at the red string on her wrist. When a person who met the criteria appeared, the red string would release a red string of karma and be tied to the target. This was related to the immortal sutra passed down in the Tushan clan, and it was very important to them. It was even related to the ascension of their extreme realm in the future, and could affect their talent and future. It's not just me, but also my sisters. The red string has not reacted. Now that my red string has reacted, it might be possible for my sisters too, Tushan Xiaoxiao thought to herself. However, in the next moment, A somewhat blushing and ambiguous smile appeared on Tushan Xiaoxiao's exquisite face. But there are 5 of us sisters. Although Jun Xiaoyaro has the sacred body of the ancients and is full of vitality, can he withstand it? Tushan Xiaoxiao's face became redder as she thought about it. The current generation of the Tushan clan had the Tushan 5 beauties. They were the quintuplets. It could be said that each of them had a different personality and a different beauty. It was enough to make countless geniuses from other realms fall in love with them. If it was really as Tushan Xiaoxiao thought, they had all successfully connected to the red string of karma. Who could withstand it if there were 5 of them at once? Did she really have to cut them into 5 equal parts? Tushan Xiaoxiao thought about the next plan and left. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro also turned around to look for the team from the immortal region. He naturally did not care about Tushan Xiaoxiao, nor did he care about the red string of karma. However, he would never have thought that he would be targeted by 5 foxes who coveted his body unknowingly. One could imagine what kind of hell would unfold if they met in the future. It did not take long for Jun Xiaoyaro to find the team from the immortal region. Brother Xiaoyaro, the son of God is back. When Jun Qingyang, Meng Zhon, and the others saw Jun Xiaoyaro, they immediately surrounded him happily. Only Ling Yang stood in the distance with her jade-like arms crossed in front of her chest. Her slender and beautiful figure stood tall like a celestial flower, noble and elegant. She glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro and raised her delicate eyebrows slightly. She then snorted and said, "I see that nothing bad happened to him. That's quite lucky of him." Although Ling Yang said so. However, she would never admit that when she saw that Jun Xiaoyaro was nowhere to be seen, she was inexplicably annoyed. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally did not care about Ling Yang, nor would he spoil her. "Clan brother, that prodigy from the Scarlet Owl clan." Jun Qingyang said. "He's dead," Jun Xiaoyaro said. As expected of clan brother Xiaoyaro. Jun Qingyang's eyes revealed a look of worship. Jun Xiaoyaro had killed a boundary emperor clan prodigy just like that. The immortal domain cultivators present were also extremely shocked. However, there was a small accident along the way. "I met a prodigy from a foreign immortal emperor clan," Jun Xiaoyaro said casually. "What?" When these words came out, everyone in the immortal domain was stunned. Someone from the immortal emperor clan actually appeared. And she even met Jun Xiaoyaro. Such a big piece of news came out of Jun Xiaoyao's mouth, but it was so casual, as if it was a small matter. However, it's a pity that she still managed to escape. Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly. Gasps could be heard from all directions. It was as if all the cold air between heaven and earth had been sucked dry. This was simply too shocking. That was a prodigy from the immortal emperor clan. Even a supreme outlawed prodigy would be killed. Lord Son of God is really. Meng Zhon and the others were speechless. Jun Xiaoyaro first killed 10 foreign royal prodigies in a row, then killed Kai Lingkong from the Boundary Emperor clan. In the end, he even made the immortal Emperor clan prodigy retreat. It was hard not to be shocked by these magnificent feats. Amitabha. Benefactor Jun is really shocking. I would like to know which heavenly emperor's reincarnation you are. A voice chanting Buddha's name was heard. The person who spoke was the reincarnated Arhat Di. Immediately, everyone's eyes were focused on him. This was because there was a rumor that the reincarnated Arhat Di was one of the 7 defiant emperors. Ling Yang was also attracted by this voice. She narrowed her eyes slightly and looked over. She had participated in the secret meeting of the 7 emperors, so she knew. Among the 7 defiant emperors, 5 of them had revealed their identities. Shi, Jiyu Tiezi, Xian Yu, Long Yao and Ji Daoyi. The remaining 2 were wearing black robes, and their identities were unknown. Among them, one of them was only a clone. The identities of the last 2 of the 7 defiant emperors were very interesting. Who could they be? Was one of them really the reincarnated Arhat Di in front of her? Jun Xiaoyaro also looked over. There was a deep look in his eyes. He had seen the previous battle. The reincarnated Arhat Di and the Yenmore Emperor seemed to be supreme outlawed sky prides. However, their true strength was definitely not the same. The reincarnated Arhat Di had hidden his true strength very well. He had not shown his true strength at all. If he were to fight against Kai Lingkong might be the unlucky one. Hey, I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not the reincarnation of some great figure. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. He was a transmigrator. How could he be reincarnated? Everyone was speechless when they heard Jun Xiaoyao's words. The idiom ordinary person was very strange when used on Jun Xiaoyaro. The smell of Versailles wafted over. Hihi, Benefactor Jun is really humble. However, Benefactor Jun, aren't you curious? Am I one of the 7 defiant emperors? That sentence instantly froze the atmosphere in the room. Almost everyone knew that Jun Xiaoyao's gamble against the heavens was not over yet. It was very likely that a shocking scene would unfold in the future. Ling Yang's hands tightened slightly. For some reason, the closer they were to the plan, the more complicated her feelings became. Jun Xiaoyao's smile froze for a moment. Then, he sighed softly. His expression was still indifferent. Actually, I don't care. Oh. The reincarnated Arhat Di's eyes flashed. It doesn't matter whether you are or not. To me, the Son of God, it doesn't make a difference. It's like there are 7 ants on the ground. If you pass by and trample them to death, would you bend down to observe whether the ants you trampled were white or black? Jun Xiaoyao's words caused the entire room to fall into a dead silence. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and their faces were filled with astonishment. The 7 defiant emperors were all peerless geniuses like Jiyu Tiezi and Ling Yang. However, according to Jun Xiaoyaro, they were just 7 ants. He didn't even have to deliberately find out their identities. Anyone who stood in his way would be trampled to death. What a domineering aura! What a kind of arrogance! Since ancient times, Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who dared to despise the heavens like this. At this moment, even Ling Yang, who was on the opposing side, was deeply shocked by Jun Xiaoyao's domineering aura. He can't win. Ling Yang murmured in his heart. Such a person could only be defeated if he wanted to. Otherwise, no one could make him lose. Chapter 867. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was arrogant. However, strangely, the crowd did not think that Jun Xiaoyaro was arrogant. Instead, they thought that it was normal. That was because Jun Xiaoyaro had created more than enough miracles. Instead, the crowd was looking forward to the bet between Jun Xiaoyaro and the heavens. They wanted to see who would win and who would lose. Jun Xiaoyao's domineering words left the reincarnated Arhat Di speechless. To be honest, he had awakened part of the wisdom of his previous life. However, even in his era, there was no peerless figure like Jun Xiaoyaro. It was even more impossible for him to compete with the heavens. Benefactor Jun's grace and bearing are impressive. I can now tell you that I am not one of the 7 sovereigns. The reincarnated Arhat Di put his palms together. His words undoubtedly dispelled many people's suspicions. No one thought that the reincarnated Arhat Di would lie about this. After all, a monk would not lie. That's good. I've already killed some Buddhist sky prides. I don't want to kill more. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly. Fahai, Jade Fozi, and the others from the Little Western Paradise had all died in his hands. Hearing this, the crowd was speechless. A supreme outlawed sky pride was no different from a chicken or a dog in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Son of God, what are your plans next? Meng Zhon stepped forward and asked. Everyone present seemed to see Jun Xiaoyaro as their leader. Where is the world tree in the world of divine ruins? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. I heard that it's in the deepest part of the world of divine ruins, inside a planet called the Verdant Emperor star. However, the Verdant Emperor left a seal on this planet. No one can break it. Meng Zhon replied. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered and then said, those divine obsessions that have broken the seal should gather at the Verdant Emperor star. That might be the final battlefield between us and the foreign realm. Jun Xiaoyao's words made the atmosphere a little heavy. The cruel battle earlier had made many sky prides from the immortal domain a little unstable. Even the supreme outlawed sky prides had fallen, let alone them. Just the world of the ruins of God was already so cruel. It was hard to imagine just how bloody and cruel the true desolate border foreign battlefield would be. Everyone found it even harder to imagine what kind of disaster would happen if the other side broke through. Alright, you guys can go and look for other places where the God's will is sealed. I have something to do for the time being, Jun Xiaoyaro said. He was ready to leave the team. Even if he was in the group, he was just slacking off, not going to stop the foreign side's plan to break the seal. Yes. Meng Zhon nodded. They would naturally obey Jun Xiaoyao's decision. Jun Xiaoyaro clasped his hands behind his back and was about to leave. Stop. A cold shout suddenly rang out. Jun Xiaoyaro stopped in his tracks and cast a sidelong glance at him. What's the matter, young Emperor Ling Yang? Ling Yang bit her red lips and asked, where are you going? Do I still need to report to young Emperor Ling Yang about my whereabouts? This somewhat distant and cold manner of address made Ling Yuan a little unhappy in her heart. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro was the only man who had seen her naked, yet now he treated her with such an attitude. Don't misunderstand. This princess just feels that it's best if you don't die in the hands of the foreign creatures. That way. This princess will be very unhappy. Jun Xiaoyaro chuckled and didn't say anything. He stepped into the air and left. Alright, let's also prepare to head to the other sealed places. We definitely can't let the foreign brat's plan succeed. Meng Zhon raised his arm and shouted. The team also gathered together to search for the next sealed place. As for Jun Xiaoyaro, he was bored to death as he strolled through the stars. He was waiting for the God's will to break through the seal and gather at the Azure Emperor star. At that time, it would be the true final battle. The game between the foreign side and the immortal domain. The bet between him and the heavens. They would all draw an endpoint there. Following that, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to wander around the world of the ruins of God. If he encountered some foreign creatures, Jun Xiaoyaro would casually kill them. After about 7 or 8 days, Jun Xiaoyaro had already begun to enter the depths of the ruins of God. At a certain moment, Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly stopped and said indifferently, "Come out." In the void, a beautiful figure appeared. It was a young girl in a black silk dress. She had a slender figure, pale skin, and a ghost mask on her face. In her hand was the death scythe that was even longer than her height. Some bandages were wrapped around her slender limbs, making her look even more sickly. She was like a blooming red spider lily on the other side of death. It was the immortal slaying bandit, Xian Yu. Jun Xiaoyaro turned around indifferently with a cold expression. Are you courting death by appearing alone? Only when the 7 emperors attacked together would they have a chance to deal with him. Now that Xian Yu had appeared alone, if she wasn't courting death, what was? Last time, on the buried Emperor Star, if Jun Xiaoyaro didn't have to look for Jiang Luoli, Xian Yu wouldn't have been able to escape from him. Of course, Xian Yu's aura was also very terrifying now. All kinds of physiques and bloodlines had merged into her body. She had a chaotic and terrifying aura, like a black hole that could devour and refine everything. However, this kind of terror was relative. For Jun Xiaoyaro, he could still suppress it. The 7 emperors have a secret meeting. Gu Tiezi is taking the lead to plot against you, Xian Yu said in a clear voice. So? Jun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change. I've also reported the information. When the quasi-emperor races and even the emperor races appear, you'll be the first to be targeted, Xian Yu continued. So? Jun Xiaoyaro repeated. The 7 emperors have a formation that is extremely terrifying. When the time comes, you'll definitely not be able to resist it, Xian Yu said with a hint of emotion in her voice. She had already said so much, but why was Jun Xiaoyaro still so calm? No one could withstand a siege of this level. Why was Jun Xiaoyaro still so calm? She couldn't see through him. However, looking at the face that vaguely resembled her brother in her memory, she couldn't completely make up her mind. If you leave the world of the divine ruins now, there may be a way to survive, Xian Yu said after a moment of silence. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the ghost-masked girl with a deep gaze. After a long while, he asked, why? He didn't care about the conspiracy that Xian Yu had told him. He was just a little curious and puzzled. Xian Yu was a person from a foreign land and was also an immortal slaying bandit who devoured bloodlines. Logically speaking, she should want to kill him and then devour his divine body, bloodline, and supreme bone. Why would Xian Yu show up now and tell him? Xian Yu fell silent. The atmosphere was still. After a long time, Xian Yu took a deep breath. She seemed to have mustered up her courage and recalled the past. She raised her slender hand and took off the ghost-masked mask on her face. Immediately, a delicate and picturesque face came into Zhun Xiaoyao's view. Such a pretty face could really move one's heart. But what caught Zhun Xiaoyao's attention was the blood tear mole at the corner of Xian Yu's eye. It was like a drop of blood tear. It set off Xian Yu's poignant beauty. "Are you willing to listen to a story?" Xian Yu said faintly. Chapter 868. Once upon a time, in a faraway foreign land, there was a small and remote country. In this small country, there was a pair of siblings. They both had a blood tear mole at the corner of their eyes. In this small country, the blood tear mole was considered an ominous sign, a symbol of disaster. Therefore, they were bullied since they were young. Even their parents could not do anything about it. The prejudice in people's hearts was like a mountain. No matter how hard one tried, it was impossible to move it. However, it was in such a cruel environment that the elder brother had always protected his younger sister. They were each other's only family. In the end, the siblings could not bear the bullying and left the family. They wandered everywhere. In the foreign land, the survival of the fittest and the rule of the strong were vividly reflected. It was hard to imagine how that pair of brother and sister had managed to survive. Later, they were captured by the underground blood-fighting arena and became slaves. The siblings were separated and underwent cruel training. Xian Yu was told that if she could win 100 matches in the underground blood-fighting arena, she would be able to regain her freedom. Not only would he be able to regain his freedom, but he would also have the bargaining chips to negotiate with him. He would also be able to obtain generous rewards. From that day onwards, no matter how cruel the training was, Xian Yu persevered. This was because she had a belief, which was to win 100 matches and leave with her brother. She had experienced many battles. Every time she went on the blood-fighting arena, both sides would wear masks. They were like wild beasts biting each other in cages. They became pastimes and entertainment. In the end, Xian Yu, who had won 99 matches, finally welcomed her last match. She could only win this round so that she could regain her freedom and leave with her brother. She only had one thought in her mind when she went on the blood-fighting arena, which was to kill her opponent and win the freedom to leave with her brother. However, to Xian Yu's surprise, her opponent for the 100th match was much weaker than she had imagined. When she stabbed the dagger in her hand into the man's chest, she was overjoyed. However, that somewhat familiar cough made Xian Yu feel as if she had lost consciousness. With trembling hands, she took off the mask on the man's face. A familiar handsome face came into view. Cough cough. You've become so strong. Brother is relieved. In the future, when you're alone, you can take care of yourself. Her 100th opponent was her brother. Her brother had gone easy on her and did not retaliate at all. This allowed Xian Yu to easily stab the dagger into his chest. She killed her own brother with her own hand. He had killed his only family member. Perhaps from that moment onwards, Xian Yu's heart was already dead. She didn't know what she had done either. However, when he regained consciousness, everyone in the underground blood-fighting arena was dead. All that was left was a ground full of broken corpses. Blood flooded her eyes and dyed her black hair red. It made the blood tear mole at the corner of her eye look even more flirtatious. What a pitiful person! A woman with a mask on her face and an enchanting figure appeared. "Are you willing to join the Parameter organization? Perhaps there's a way for your brother to reincarnate," the woman suggested. Later on, Mystic Moon joined the Parameter organization. He then became the leader of the 13 Great Bandits, the Immortal Execution Bandit. The story was over. After listening to the story, Zhun Xiaoyao's face was calm. He finally understood why Xian Yu had such a strange reaction towards him. Obviously, she saw the shadow of her brother in him. Zhun Xiaoyao couldn't help but think of the woman with the ghost mask. The Parameter Organization, the Parameter Clan, the Ghost-Masked Woman, the Parameter Flower. What was the connection between these clues? What was the relationship between the foreign Parameter Clan and the Ghost-Masked Woman in the Bronze Immortal Palace? For a moment, Jun Xiaoyao had many mysteries in his heart. He felt that he wanted to solve these mysteries. The only way was to go to the foreign realm and find the truth in the Parameter Clan. However, very few people did this kind of thing. After all, the foreign realm was too dangerous. It was very difficult for the creatures of the immortal realm to hide their aura. It could be said that it was very dangerous. So, you see the shadow of your brother in me? Jun Xiaoyao said lightly. Xian Yu was silent. Obviously, this was the answer. Jun Xiaoyao sneered and said, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Your story may be moving, but I, Jun Xiaoyao, am not anyone's substitute. Whether it was the mysterious ghost-masked woman who walked in the ancient history, or Xian Yu in front of him, they all seemed to treat him as someone's substitute. But he was only Jun Xiaoyao. He would not be anyone, and it was impossible for him to become anyone. I know, Xian Yu said. She did not expect Jun Xiaoyao's attitude towards her to change. So, you can choose to leave the world of divine ruins, Xian Yu said. She was betraying the organization and the foreign realm by revealing the secret. However, she was struggling in her heart. It was difficult for her to hurt Jun Xiaoyao again. Wouldn't that be equivalent to killing her brother for the second time? You don't have to worry about that. Seeing that you have told me the news, I, the Son of God, will let you go this time. But next time, you and I will fight to the death. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was cold and filled with killing intent. Why? Xian Yu tightened her grip on the death scythe. Because you hurt Sister Xingyi and wanted to steal her innate Dao embryo. You almost killed her. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were incomparably cold. If he had not arrived in time on the buried Emperor Star, Xian Yu might have really killed Jiang Xingyi and refined her innate Dao embryo. Xian Yu's fate was very tragic and pitiful. However, that was not a reason for Jun Xiaoyao to let her go. That woman again. Xian Yu clenched her jade-like hands. Her nails pierced her palms and blood seeped out. For some reason, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. It was as if the most precious thing in her heart had been taken away by another woman. Let's go. The next time we meet, I won't show you any mercy. Jun Xiaoyao shook his head slightly and turned to leave. Xian Yu bit her lips as she looked at Jun Xiaoyao's back view. She felt that her cheeks were a little wet and cold. Was she crying? How long had it been? She thought that she had forgotten to cry. But why was her dead heart still throbbing faintly? Xian Yu's matter was just an interlude. Jun Xiaoyao's goal would not be shaken by anyone. Just as Jun Xiaoyao was heading in the direction of the Azure the Arch planet. In another star domain. A vast number of foreign cultivators had gathered here. Among them, there were no less than a dozen foreign cultivators from the royal families. Apart from them, there were also a few powerful quasi-emperor clans. In the void, a beautiful woman wearing a long dress with flowing sleeves appeared. Her skin was as white as snow, and her appearance was as beautiful as snow. It was Tushan Xiaoxiao. On the other side, two figures also appeared. One was wearing a blood-red robe and had a pair of blood phoenix wings on his back. The other person had a black dragon horn on his head and 9 demonic eyes on his face. He looked very strange. Fallen Demon Emperor Clan, Huang Naitian. Evil Dragon Bloodline, 9-eyed Evil Dragon. Tushan Xiaoxiao looked at the two of them and was slightly surprised. She did not expect them to be here. The Fallen Demon Phoenix Bloodline and the Evil Dragon Bloodline were both famous quasi-emperor clans in the foreign domain. These two quasi-emperor clans' prodigies were extremely terrifying and were not much weaker than the emperor clan's prodigies. I did not expect that the honorable third princess of Tushan would also appear. Huang Naitian looked at Tushan Xiaoxiao, his eyes flickering. This time, a madman has appeared in the immortal domain. He killed our quasi-emperor clan's Kai Lingkong, the Scarlet Owl race's Kai Lingkong. I want to see that person, the Evil Dragon Bloodline's 9-eyed Evil Dragon said coldly. A foreign quasi-emperor clan's prodigy being killed was undoubtedly a humiliation that needed to be washed away. Don't worry. When the time comes, there will naturally be a chance, Tushan Xiaoxiao said, her eyes flickering. She naturally had her own plans. At this moment, a powerful aura appeared in the distance again. Oh! Another immortal emperor clan came? Tushan Xiaoxiao was surprised. Chapter 869. She thought that she was the only emperor clan prodigy on this trip to the divine ruins. She did not expect other emperor clan prodigies to come as well. Tushan Xiaoxiao looked over with her beautiful eyes. A group of people arrived. The leader was a tall and slender man surrounded by snowflakes. Behind him, the faint silhouette of a towering ancient tree appeared. Beside him were a few figures. They were the immortal domain prodigies. The weakest among them were outlawed prodigies. There were even supreme outlawed prodigies around him. However, these immortal domain prodigies seemed to have lost their minds and were being manipulated by this young man like puppets. Piyu Yao, you actually appeared. This man's appearance surprised Tushan Xiaoxiao. Beside her, Huang Naitian and the nine-eyed evil dragon's eyes were filled with surprise. This man named Piyu Yao had an extraordinary background. He was a young king of the demonic cattail tribe, an immortal emperor clan from the foreign domain. The demonic cattail tribe was a plant-type emperor clan from the foreign domain. Its true form was the demonic cattail tree. It was also the towering ancient tree that vaguely appeared behind this man. The demonic cattail tribe was extremely powerful. The demonic cattail king was also one of the most famous and powerful immortal kings in the foreign domain. His seniority was also far above the newly ascended immortal kings like the Scarlet Owl King. This tribe was powerful and their methods were even more bizarre. The snowflakes floating around Piyu Yao were actually demonic cattail seeds. These demonic cattail seeds could parasitize the human brain, turning the host into a puppet to be manipulated. They could even parasitize existences stronger than themselves. This move was absolutely heaven-defying. Behind Piyu Yao, there was even a grand knight that emitted a quasi-supreme aura, controlled by the demonic cattail seeds. Heh, this place is quite lively. The man named Piyu Yao smiled slightly, calm and collected. That was the confidence brought about by powerful strength. Huang Naitian and the nine-eyed evil dragon's eyes were filled with fear, as well as a hint of respect. This was because Piyu Yao was one of the 10 heavenly kings. The 10 heavenly kings were the 10 most powerful prodigies among the foreign domain's younger generation. Their prestige and charisma were extremely strong. Piyu Yao was ranked at the bottom of the 10 heavenly kings. However, he was still extremely strong, much stronger than these immortal emperor's prodigies. Furthermore, his cultivation had reached the pseudo-9 heavens supreme realm, although Piyu Yao was already over 1,000 years old. However, for Piyu Yao clan, this age really was quite young, still considered a youth. Even for ordinary cultivators, 1,000 years was not considered old. Compared to those who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years before becoming a quasi-supreme, Piyu Yao's talent was already indisputable. Of course, he still couldn't be compared to Jun Xiaoyao, who was in his 20s, because Jun Xiaoyao was different. Who would have thought that a small divine ruins world would be able to attract you here? I thought that you would only go to the desolate border battlefield, said Tushan Xiaoxiao. If it was just a world of the ruins of God, I would naturally not be interested in coming. However, if the world tree is added, then it would be different. Piyu Yao smiled slightly. Ji Hao was gentle to Tushan third princess. Oh, hasn't the world tree been sealed all this time? Tushan Xiaoxiao raised her eyebrows. I have a feeling that if the 7 sins divine will successfully break the seal on the world tree will be undone. That will be my chance, said Piyu Yao. In his eyes, there was a resolute light that showed that he was determined to win. As a plant-type clan, the world tree's attraction to Piyu Yao was too great. As long as he could obtain the world tree, Piyu Yao was confident that he could grow into a powerful immortal king like the demonic cattail king in the future. Apart from that, I heard that the son of God of the immortal region's Jun family is a bit arrogant. I would also like to meet him. Piyu Yao smiled nonchalantly. Tushan Xiaoxiao frowned slightly when she heard this. She was still interested in Jun Xiaoyaro. All right, when the divine will breaks the seal, we can head straight to the Azure Emperor planet, said Pu Yao. On the other side, there were Pu Yaro and Tushan Xiaoxiao, two emperor race prodigies. There were also Huang Naitian, the nine-eyed evil dragon, and other quasi-emperor race prodigies. In addition, there were also many king race prodigies. One could imagine how intense the final battle would be. As time passed, the situation on the Immortal Region's side became more and more dangerous. Boom! It was accompanied by a loud bang. In a certain star domain, another divine will broke the seal. A blue lotus bloomed, and a divine will stood on top of it. It was the indigo feather lotus that represented greed. Sigh, we can't stop it. Let's retreat. A handsome silver-haired man in a snow-white cloak shook his head and sighed. It was the Ascendant King. If this continues, will the divine ruins really be destroyed? Beside him, the beautiful Yu Yunchang had a worried look on her face. After coming to the divine ruins, she finally understood what cruelty was. Compared to such a bloody battle, the original cruelty of the ultimate ancient road felt like child's play. Even if the sky collapses, there will be someone tall to hold it up. This isn't something we can change by ourselves, said the Ascendant King. When Yu Yunchang heard this, she didn't know why, but a peerless figure in white appeared in her mind. No, there is one person who can reverse the situation all by himself, Yu Yunchang vowed solemnly. You are referring to Brother Jun? The Ascendant King's eyes flickered. That's right. Didn't you hear the news that young Master Jun killed 10 sovereign race sky prides of the Boundary Emperor race? Speaking of this, Yu Yunchang's beautiful eyes lit up. Back on the buried Emperor star, she was already Jun Xiaoyao's fangirl. Now that she heard this news, she worshipped him from the bottom of her heart. Looking at Yu Yunchang's expression, the Ascendant King fell silent. I hope so. Another half a month passed. Jun Xiaoyaro finally got close to the Azure Emperor star. From afar, Jun Xiaoyaro could feel the power of the world spreading. The power of the world was so pure that it even made Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe restless. Now, Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe already had the creation jade disc, spring of life, immortal source ancestral vein, and other treasures. If a world tree were to be added to the mix, one could only imagine just how much more powerful Jun Xiaoyaro would become. He would definitely reach the 7th stage of the Supremacy Realm. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped into the void. Not long after, the Azure Emperor star finally appeared in front of him. It was an incomparably huge green planet. It was lush and full of vitality. On the surface of the planet, various mysterious and complicated patterns could be vaguely seen. They formed a layer of sealing barrier that was similar to the atmosphere. The entire planet was sealed within. The world tree should be inside this planet, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. However, what caught his attention was that in the sky above the Azure Emperor star, 4 lotus flowers floated above. The pink lotus of joy, which represented lust. The purple water lotus, which represented jealousy. The indigo feather lotus, which represented greed. The pure white lotus, which represented laziness. The 4 sins of the 7 sins God's obsessions had already arrived at the Azure Emperor star. They didn't do anything and didn't react to Jun Xiaoyao's arrival. Jun Xiaoyaro knew what they were doing. They were waiting. Chapter 870. 4 of the 7 sins God consciousnesses had arrived at the Azure the Arch planet. They sat cross-legged above the Azure the Arch planet, releasing their terrifying power to erode the seal of the Azure the Arch planet. However, it was not the time yet. They were waiting for all the 7 sins God consciousnesses to arrive. Then, they would merge into one and become a powerful evil consciousness to break the seal of the Azure the Arch planet and seize the world tree. After that, the evil consciousness that obtained the world tree would definitely break through the entire world of the ruins of God. At that time, the gap at the border would be difficult to block. The foreign army would march straight in. Even though the celestial realm had rules to suppress them, the foreign army would definitely have a way to deal with it. At the very least, as long as the gap at the border existed, it would be a huge hidden danger. It was easy to imagine that this was a matter that would affect the whole situation. Jun Xiaoyaro could be considered to be taking a big gamble. If I fail, the border will be breached. Then, I should be considered a sinner of the entire Nine Heavens immortal realm. Jun Xiaoyaro chuckled. He clearly had the ability to stop the god consciousnesses from breaking the seal, but he allowed the foreign army to do so. If the fourth master Scar and the others knew about it, they would be disappointed in him. However, if things went according to Jun Xiaoyao's plan, then, he might be able to completely solve the problem of the evil consciousness. At that time, Jun Xiaoyaro would be praised as a hero again. The human heart was like this. Jun Xiaoyaro did not care about his reputation. He only cared about whether his plan would succeed or not. It seems that I can't enter the Azure the Archplanet for the time being. Jun Xiaoyaro moved slightly closer. He discovered that the barrier around the Azure the Archplanet was shaking because of the arrival of the four god consciousnesses. However, it was still difficult to enter. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was planning to observe for a while. Deep in the stars in the distance, many auras suddenly appeared. The foreign army? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. Densely packed foreign creatures appeared in the distance. There were people from all the royal families. There were also sacred masters and quasi-supreme experts. This was an extremely powerful force. Could it be that they are also here for the world tree? Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. He did not hide himself. Therefore, the foreign army on the other side quickly noticed Jun Xiaoyaro. It's a cultivator from the celestial realm, his alone, his not running. Interesting. Has he already resigned himself to fate? They saw Jun Xiaoyaro standing calmly in the air, seemingly unfazed by their arrival. These foreign creatures all carried astonishment. Young master, we meet again. Jun Xiaoyaro saw a familiar figure in the foreign army. It was Tushan Yu. Apart from her, there was also Huang Naitian of the fallen demon phoenix race and the nine-eyed evil dragon of the evil dragon bloodline. Puu clan demon god demon race. Clearly, they were here for the world tree. Realm world worlds world s realms world. June. Puu Yarrow looked at Jun Xiaoyaro coldly. Jun Xiaoyaro also looked at Puu, frowning slightly. Puu looked very young, but his cultivation had reached the quasi-supreme level. He was much stronger than the immortal region's prodigies. Kai Lingkong of my Scarlet Owl race was killed by you. The nine-eyed evil dragon also stepped out, the 9 eyes on his face emitting a cold light. Jun Xiaoyaro had single-handedly killed many geniuses from foreign lands. Therefore, he had long been on the foreign realm's kill list. The foreign army on the other side was made up of king clans, quasi-emperor clans, and emperor clans. Apart from the younger generation, there were also quasi-supreme experts from various clans. This power could be said to be extremely terrifying. At the moment, however, Jun Xiaoyaro was the one who had to face everything alone. One man could hold the pass, 10,000 could not pass. Jun Xiaoyao's expression remained unfazed, as calm as ever. It was as if he was not facing a ferocious foreign army, but a group of ants. Let me kill this person. A young expert in the foreign army directly attacked. He was dressed in a black monk's robe. His head was bald, and there were 6 marks. He looked like a monk. However, there were demonic patterns engraved all over his body. Nether energy surged, carrying a boundless baleful aura. This was a young expert of the dark nether monk race. It was rumored that a Buddhist lineage in the immortal region betrayed the foreign realm and became a king clan after falling. Heavenly Brahma demonic voice. The young expert of the dark nether monk race opened his mouth and shouted. The complex and ancient Buddhist heavenly voice reverberated, but it carried a fallen syllable, as if it had been demonized. The void in front of him was completely shattered. The stars collided and were directly annihilated. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a hint of coldness as he took a step forward. He completely ignored the heavenly Brahma demonic voice, and all sound waves could not get close to him. It was magic power immunity. Boom. Jun Xiaoyao's palm pressed down. It was as if there were stars and galaxies revolving around it, as if a vast sky was crushing down. Jun Xiaoyaro, who had reached the Holy Lord realm, was not afraid even when facing a quasi-supreme at his peak. Not to mention this kind of ant. Ah! A miserable cry sounded. With a puff, the dark nether monk was directly crushed into a bloody pulp. Let me do it. A shadow charged at Jun Xiaoyaro like a bolt of lightning. It was an extremely strange and terrifying creature. Its body was like a centipede with 100 legs. The front half of its body was like a mantis, with 2 sharp arms like heavenly blades. This was the Mantis King clan of the foreign realm, like a combination of a mantis and a centipede. Although the Mantis King clan was not one of the top 10 king clans, it was ranked in the top 20 among the 100 king clans. This Mantis King clan expert was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning. Swoosh! 2 sharp arms like a mantis slashed towards Jun Xiaoyaro like heavenly blades. This clan did not know how to use any divine weapons at all. This was because their blade-like arms were their strongest weapons. They were fused with all kinds of divine iron and immortal gold and were comparable to the top supreme artifacts. However, Jun Xiaoyaro only flicked his finger, and it landed on the blade-like arms of the Mantis King clan expert. Clang! A jarring sound of metal colliding rang out, and sparks flew everywhere. How is this possible? The young Mantis King clan expert was completely dumbfounded. His blade-like arms were always successful as long as he slashed out, and his opponent would usually be cut into 8 pieces. However, this young cultivator from the immortal realm in front of him easily blocked his attack with his physical body. Fart! Jun Xiaoyaro flicked his finger, and the immortal slaying sword Qi shot out, directly piercing through the head of the young Mantis King clan expert, and even his primordial spirit was shattered. Next, more than 10 king clan experts attacked one after another. It was not that those quasi-supreme experts would only watch in a daze. It was that the foreign realm's martial spirit was fierce. The humiliation of the younger generation had to be washed away by the younger generation. That was why the mighty ones of the royal families challenged Jun Xiaoyaro one after another, intending to take down the invincible divine child of the Jun family of the immortal realm and show off the might of the geniuses of the other realms. However, after more than 10 battles in a row, Jun Xiaoyaro killed more than 10 king clan prodigies by himself. It was dead silent all around. Even the expressions of those half-supreme being experts from the other side were extremely stunned. When did such a terrifying freak appear in the immortal realm? I'm afraid that when he grows up, he'll be another white-robed killing god. There were already quasi-supreme experts of the foreign realm who began to emit killing intent. They would not allow another person like Jun Wuhui to appear. Let me do it. The nine-eyed evil dragon stepped out from the foreign realm army. As a king clan prodigy, the nine-eyed evil dragon's status was clearly not something the king clan prodigies could compare to. The great one from the king clan is about to attack. He will definitely take down Jun Xiaoyaro. Seeing the nine-eyed evil dragon step out, many of the foreign realm's prodigies cheered excitedly. If Jun Xiaoyaro did not die, the foreign realm's younger generation would lose face. A cold smirk was seen at the corner of his mouth. So what if they were king clan prodigies? In his eyes, they were just fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Just as the great battle was about to begin, suddenly, a terrifying aura appeared in the distance. A dazzling golden lotus tore through the air and arrived. The 5th divine obsession had appeared. With the arrival of this divine obsession, the seal around the azure emperor star began to tremble. Then, a crack appeared. Chapter 871. The dazzling golden lotus landed in the sky above the azure emperor planet. It sat cross-legged with the other 4 divine obsessions. This divine obsession was the great sun golden lotus, which represented arrogance in the 7 sins. With the arrival of the 5th divine obsession, the entire azure emperor planet began to tremble. The mystical seal on the outside began to tremble violently. Then, a crack appeared. This scene instantly turned the situation around. Even Pu Yarrow, who had been calm before, found it difficult to remain calm at this moment. The crack meant that they had a chance to enter in advance and seize the world tree. Let's kill this kid first, then enter the Azure Emperor planet. Some of the quasi-supremes from the other side were murderous. Originally, they wanted to use Jun Xiaoyaro as a whetstone for the younger generation of the other side. Now, entering the Azure Emperor planet was more important than anything else. After all, other than the World Tree, there might be other treasures hidden in the Azure Emperor planet. Rumble. One of the quasi-supremes from the other side directly attacked, pressing his palm toward Jun Xiaoyao. It was so powerful that it could collapse the sky. Humph. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. As he raised his hand, his blood rushed into the sky, forming a golden blood dragon. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist was displayed. Crack. Bang. A heaven-shaking, earth-shattering sound rang out. The arm of the quasi-supremes who attacked was directly blasted into a cloud of blood mist. How could this be? The people from the other side were all stunned, their jaws almost falling to the ground. They could understand Jun Xiaoyao casually crushing the King family heaven's pride. After all, Jun Xiaoyao was the descendant of Jun Wuhui. Like father, like son. But now, the one who attacked was a quasi-supremes. This, Huang Naitian and the nine-eyed evil dragon were also slightly stunned. They suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. Pu Yaro's gaze abruptly turned sharp, and he no longer had the calm expression from before. With his cultivation as a quasi-supremes and his identity as one of the 10 heavenly kings. To be honest, Pu Yaro didn't put Jun Xiaoyao on the same level as himself at the beginning. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated the son of God of the Jun family of the immortal region. As for Tushan Xiaoxiao, her beautiful eyes were even brighter. Jun Xiaoyao was indeed a perfect man, 1 in a million. She was already planning how to tie him up and bring him back to the other side. Damn it, that quasi-supreme was flustered and exasperated. The eyes of the other quasi-supremes of the foreign domain were unprecedentedly cold. The talent and strength Jun Xiaoyao displayed already represented that in the future, he would be a great hidden danger to the other side. Kill. Several quasi-supremes attacked at the same time. He wanted to eliminate this threat directly. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was incomparably calm from beginning to end. At this moment, a powerful quasi-supreme fluctuation spread out from the distant sky. You bastards from the other side, you dare to attack the Son of God. You are simply courting death. His roar was like a sudden clap of thunder. In another direction, a large group of people was rushing over. Shockingly, they were from the Immortal Region's camp. Meng Zhon and the other Grand Knights directly attacked, colliding with the quasi-supremes of the foreign domain. Jun Xiaoyao glanced over. He found that many teams had already gathered together. Ling Yang, Jiu Tiezi, Long Yaro Ji Daoi, Ji Qingyi, Feather King, Yu Yunchang, most of the teams had gathered together. Obviously, the Immortal Region's side also knew that it was inevitable for the divine will to break the seal. They could only come to the Azure Emperor Star and try their best to prevent the divine will from merging and obtaining the World Tree. However, before dealing with the divine will, they still had to deal with the foreign army. Jun Xiaoyao did not hesitate. He took a step forward and headed straight for the crack in the seal on the Azure Emperor planet. He was determined to obtain the World Tree. On the other side, Pu Yaro, Tushan Xiaoxiao, Nine-Eyed Evil Dragon, Huang Naitian, and other geniuses also flashed over. Let's go too. The geniuses on the Immortal Region's side naturally also noticed the crack, and they all turned into streaks of light and rushed over. As for the remaining experts on both sides, they fought each other to prevent each other from entering. For a time, the entire starry sky around the Azure Emperor Star was filled with countless magical powers colliding, setting off monstrous ripples. A shocking battle unfolded. Jun Xiaoyao's figure turned into an afterimage, as if he was shuttling through the void. He instantly rushed to the Azure Emperor Star. As far as the eye could see, all kinds of vegetation were densely packed. Towering ancient trees, and a wild forest. Tens of thousands of years old herbs grew between the cliffs, emitting a dazzling divine light and a fragrance that made one's body go limp. These old herbs were extremely valuable. However, Jun Xiaoyao directly ignored them. Right now, he only had one goal, and that was the World Tree. Jun Xiaoyao was in the lead position, so he was the first to enter the Azure Emperor Star. Behind him, the geniuses from the Immortal Region and the other side also followed closely behind. With Jun Xiaoyao's speed, he arrived at the depths of the Azure Emperor Star in less than 15 minutes. There was a huge rift valley there. It was bottomless and emitted a strange aura. Jun Xiaoyaro was able to sense the power of the world lurking within. Where the world tree is. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were clear as he flashed in. Swoosh. An extremely fast shadow tore through the air, tearing the void, and all kinds of runes and divine chains of order were shattered. It was a whip-like vine that lashed toward Jun Xiaoyao. Even a quasi-supreme martial artist would be injured if caught off guard. Jun Xiaoyao casually used his sword fingers and used the grass symbol sword technique. The leaves shook, and the sharp sword light could shatter the stars in the sky. The vine was directly cut into pieces. Then, Jun Xiaoyao quickly descended into the abyss of the Rift Valley. Among them was an ancient demonic vine whose aura had reached the Sacred Lord level. With Jun Xiaoyao's eyesight, he could naturally see that this was originally an extremely ordinary demonic vine. However, it had become so powerful after being soaked in the aura of the World Tree. This even more showed the power of creation of the World Tree. Boom! Jun Xiaoyao didn't have time to waste. He attacked forcefully and killed this Sacred Lord demonic vine. Then, Jun Xiaoyao continued to go deeper. He discovered that there were countless spatial faults and incomplete ancient arrays under this Rift Valley. If he wasn't careful, he might be killed or teleported to other places in the Divine Ruins world. Fortunately, Jun Xiaoyao's divine sense was extremely powerful, so these obstacles were nothing to him. Finally, Jun Xiaoyao arrived at the bottom of the Rift Valley first. As he went deeper into the place, the force of the world surged toward him like a surging tide. The bottom of this Rift Valley was almost deep inside the Lotus the Arch planet. It was like a vast underground world. And in the middle of the tide caused by the world power was an indescribably majestic giant tree. The galaxy surrounded its body, and stars decorated the crown of the tree like diamonds. The surrounding chaotic fog lingered, and the stars were as dense as grains of sand. With him as the center, the mighty power of the world surged in all directions. This ancient tree seemed to be born in the center of the universe. One leaf, one world. I found the world tree. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up like never before. Chapter 872. The world tree was a supreme treasure of heaven and earth. It was even rarer than an emperor weapon. It could even be compared to an immortal weapon. It was something that even emperors coveted. It was extremely helpful in shaping the universe and was extremely valuable. Although Jun Xiaoyao had the Spring of Life, the immortal source ancestral vein, and other rare treasures in his inner universe. However, they were still not as valuable as the world tree. At that moment, Jun Xiaoyao felt it as well. In the innerverse, the lotus seed within the Spring of Life began to tremble slightly. It seemed like it would split open soon. Ha ha! So this is the world tree. It's a rare treasure of heaven and earth. A soft and cold voice sounded. Jun Xiaoyao turned around and saw a group of foreign prodigies. The one who spoke was Pu Yaro. Tushan Xiaoxiao, Huang Naitian, and the nine-eyed evil dragon were all there. There were also many other royal prodigies. No matter what, this person must die. Without wasting any time, the nine-eyed evil dragon of the Sin Dragon tribe made its move. Dark dragon Qi erupted, swallowing heaven and earth. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. The evil dragon bloodline was an extremely powerful quasi-emperor race of the foreign lands. The scar on the fourth Master Scar's head was left behind by one of the strongest of the evil dragon tribe. Jun Xiaoyao, die. The nine-eyed evil dragon opened its mouth and roared. A ray of black light shot out. It was a mini black dragon. The mini black dragon instantly transformed into a black dragon blade that was burning with hellfire. The black dragon blade slashed toward Jun Xiaoyao, setting off a torrent of hellfire. The eerie blade Qi cut through the void and destroyed everything in its path. Jun Xiaoyao saw this and reached out to block the black dragon blade with his bare hands. Dazzling sparks accompanied the sound of metal clashing. White and black light surged from Jun Xiaoyao's hands, flowing with the will of life and death. The all-heaven wheel of death burst forth. Boom! The nine-eyed evil dragon felt as if its body was about to be torn apart. As for the black dragon blade, it was directly split into two. Splat! Half of the nine-eyed evil dragon's body was torn apart. Don't even think about it. Huang Naitian attacked as well. Blood-colored divine flames surged. Rumors had it that the Phoenix tribe of the Nine Heavens immortal realm had fallen from grace. Their innate blood-red divine flame could allow them to be reborn, but it could also destroy the bodies of their enemies. Blood-colored divine flames surged and condensed into a flaming blood phoenix. It pounced towards Jun Xiaoyaro with extreme ferocity. Jun Xiaoyaro stretched out a hand. Lightning twined around it as runes branded the void. The Lightning Emperor finger was displayed. It was as if the ancient Lightning Emperor had reached out. It was incomparably thick, gathering lightning, crushing that flame blood phoenix. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped on the Kuan Peng and instantly appeared in front of Huang Naitian. Golden qi and blood soared into the heavens. A fist smashed down. Continuous cracking sounds could be heard. Huang Qiishan's entire body exploded, and his nascent spirit shook violently. He had almost died. Huang Naitian released a shrill scream, quickly retreating towards the other side's camp. His entire body surged with bloody flames. In the end, he actually underwent rebirth, once again reconstructing his flesh. This clearly showed how powerful the fallen demon Phoenix tribe was. However, Huang Naitian's face was extremely pale. There was even a hint of fear in his eyes. He was a genius of a quasi-emperor clan, yet he couldn't even last a single round against Jun Xiaoyaro. What kind of monster did the Jun family of the immortal realm have? Following this, many geniuses of the other side shifted their attention to Piyu Yarrow and Tushan Xiaoxiao. Perhaps only these geniuses of the monarch clans were qualified to fight against Jun Xiaoyaro. Interesting, but today, I must get the world tree, and you must die, Piyu Yarrow said coldly. He didn't make a move himself. Instead, several figures appeared beside him. They were the geniuses of the immortal realm that he had controlled with the cattail demon seeds. There was even a grand knight of the quasi-supreme level among them. The coldness in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes deepened when he saw these people charging at him. The cattail demon tribe was infamous in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. The strongest expert of the tribe, the cattail demon king, could even control the quasi-emperors of the immortal realm with the cattail demon seeds. Even the emperors of the immortal realm had been controlled in the history books. From this, it could be seen how powerful this clan was, and how intimidating it was. It could be said that each member of the cattail demon tribe was an army. Because they could control many enemies, they were a great threat to the immortal realm. Jun Xiaoyaro executed the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. 6 reincarnation vortexes crushed forward like a universe. Rumble. The powerful force exploded the void. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. All kinds of divine chains of order shot out. Apart from the Grand Knight of the quasi-supreme level, the other experts of the immortal realm that were controlled by the parasites were killed by Jun Xiaoyao's punch. His invincible aura shook the surroundings. The Grand Knight that was controlled charged at Jun Xiaoyaro with the aura of a quasi-supreme spreading. Jun Xiaoyao's body shook. With the support of the immortal body of the great all-embracing immortal, he threw a punch with the power of the sacred body. Bang! Ripples spread in all directions. The Grand Knight was the one who was knocked back. Isn't this too terrifying? His suppressing a quasi-supreme as a sacred leader. The geniuses of the other side were extremely shocked. They knew their average strength was much higher than the cultivators of the immortal realm. At the same cultivation level, the creatures of the other side definitely had the upper hand. But now, Jun Xiaoyao's combat strength couldn't be measured by cultivation level at all. It was unbelievably strong. There was a huge gap between a sacred leader and a quasi-supreme, but Jun Xiaoyaro could cross it. Fortunately, we found him now. If we let him develop for a few more years, he might really become another god of slaughter, Piyu Yarrow said calmly. He seemed to have confirmed that Jun Xiaoyaro would die today. On the other hand, Tushan Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes flickered as she thought of a plan. She didn't want Jun Xiaoyaro to die, because Jun Xiaoyaro had a special meaning to her. Rumble. Jun Xiaoyaro punched out, causing the void to distort. Thousands of rays of light drowned out the world. A hint of struggle appeared in the Grand Knight's eyes as he muttered a few words. Please, kill me. Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyao sighed slightly. A wisp of reincarnation immortal chi supported his arm, and then he punched down with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Fat. The quasi-supreme Grand Knight was killed. Before he died, there was a hint of relief in his eyes. This made Jun Xiaoyao even colder towards Pu Yao. It seems that before I get the world tree, I'll have to kill you ants first. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was indifferent. A great battle was about to break out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, at this moment, a few more figures arrived. They were the immortal domain's sky prides. Almost all of the outlawed sky prides who were gathered in the original imperial city were here. Whether it was Jiyu Tiezi, Ling Yang, Ji Daoi, Long Yaro or Jiyu Tiezi who were on the opposite side of Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Lingtsang, Lord Grim, and the others who were on Jun Xiaoyao's side were all here. Seeing this, there was some commotion on the foreign domain's side. After all, Jun Xiaoyao alone was terrifying enough. He killed so many people that they didn't have any temper. Now, another group of outlawed sky prides from the immortal domain had arrived. Even if they had Pu Yarrow and the others, they were still cautious and vigilant. The World Tree, Jiyu Tiezi and the others also saw the World Tree, and they couldn't help but have a fiery look in their eyes. Then, his gaze fell on Jun Xiaoyao. The atmosphere was a little strange for a moment. However, what happened next was extremely unexpected for the foreign domain's living beings. Jiyu Tiezi's gaze was cold as he looked at Jun Xiaoyao, and he said faintly, "Jun Xiaoyao, this is the place where your legend ends. Not bad, right?" Chapter 873. Jiyu Tiezi's words completely froze the atmosphere. On immortal domain's side, many heavenly geniuses revealed looks of surprise, some even carrying shock. At this type of critical juncture, could it be that Jiyu Tiezi was going to act against Jun Xiaoyao? The foreign creatures were even a bit confused, thinking that they misheard. What kind of trouble was this? Could it be that it shouldn't be a great battle between Immortal Domain and the other side? Why did it seem like Immortal Domain was going to have internal strife now? Interesting. Pu Yarrow's eyes revealed a hint of rumination. He didn't act blindly without thinking. This type of situation was something he didn't expect at all. Jiyu Tiezi, you are impudent. Jun Lingtsang and Lord Grimm's eyes revealed extreme cold intent. At this type of critical juncture, Jiyu Tiezi actually turned around, targeting Jun Xiaoyao. They all said that the greater picture was the most important. Now, it seemed like Jiyu Tiezi didn't know what the greater picture was. Heh, Jun Xiaoyao is an anomaly throughout time, someone who defies the heavens. Not even immortal domains can tolerate him, sending down the 7 emperors to kill him. I, Jiyu Tiezi, comply with the will of the heavens, inherit the position of the 7 emperors. Killing Jun Xiaoyao, isn't this to be expected? After Jun Xiaoyao falls, the heavens will bestow the heavenly Dao crown. At that time, a new immortal domain leader will naturally be chosen to protect immortal domain. Jiyu Tiezi held his head high and chest out, his bearing extraordinary. The words he spoke were also dignified, impossible to refute. Heh, I fear that immortal domain's leader is what you want to obtain, right? Towards Jiyu Tiezi's provocation, Jun Xiaoyao wasn't surprised in the slightest. It was better to say that this was completely within his plans. Jiyu Tiezi was proud and arrogant, naturally unable to endure the glory of this world being seized by Jun Xiaoyao. That was why he wanted to fight. No matter what price he had to fight for this world's mandate. Let me go first. A beautiful figure stood out. She was wearing a snow-white dress, and her long legs were lustrous and glossy. Her long purple hair was as smooth and shiny as silk. Her beautiful face was filled with determination, and her noble purple-gold phoenix eyes were filled with fighting spirit. It was the transformed Long Yarrow. Long Yarrow's transformation was not only in her appearance. Her aura had also become extremely powerful. She had always been obsessed with fighting Jun Xiaoyao again. This was the obsession of an overlord. Loser, it seems like you haven't learned your lesson, Jun Xiaoyao said calmly. The past is the past. Today, everything will be rewritten. Long Yarrow also did not speak much nonsense and directly attacked. She clenched her 5 fingers tightly and punched out with a slender fist that carried a mighty force that could destroy the heavens. The monstrous purple overlord body's chi and blood surged like a tide. Jun Xiaoyaro strode forward like a divine king. Every step he took caused the space around him to tremble. He stretched out his palm, and it was like the hand of an ancient god. It covered the sky and the sun, vast and mighty, the power of the sacred body, the great Luo immortal body, and the power of 100,000 divine elephants. The divine power doubled as it crushed forward. Bang! It was just one blow, but Long Yarrow was forced back. She felt a terrifying crushing force that made her body unable to bear it. How is this possible? Long Yarrow was stunned. Jun Xiaoyaro would not give her a chance to react. He punched out, and the Kuan Peng was immeasurable. Endless runes formed an immemorial Kuan Peng, with a thought, wind and thunder shook, crushing everything in the world. Fart! Long Yarrow was sent flying again, and she spat out blood. Her hair danced in the wind, and a vast dragon's aura burst out. Behind her, an ancient great void dragon that filled the sky appeared. The power of the ancient golden dragon's bloodline was pushed to the extreme. Dragon Emperor immeasurable. At this moment, Long Yarrow was like a dragon empress that stood above thousands of dragons. Her power was monstrous, and she was terrifying. Under this pressure, many prodigies felt suffocated. This is the ancient golden dragon's bloodline. Long Yarrow is really heaven-defying, some prodigies exclaimed. The ancient golden dragon's bloodline combined with the hegemonic body of the heavens. This talent was simply amazing. If it were any other opponent, they would probably be shocked. However, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were calm. He was not interested in wasting time with a defeated opponent. He stomped his foot, and an equally majestic figure appeared behind him. Sacred Body Avatar, Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens. On one side was the ancient dragon avatar, and on the other side was the Immortal King avatar. The fluctuations that overflowed caused a huge tremor. If it were not for the world tree stabilizing the space, the void would have been torn apart. Jun Xiaoyaro used his fingers as a sword, and the immortal slaying sword chi swept out. With the support of the Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens, the power of this move doubled. The sword chi that was as thick as a mountain ridge collapsed the space in front of it. Runes exploded, and the divine chains of order were cut apart. Boom! A deafening sound erupted. Amidst the endless smoke and dust, a ray of green light suddenly pierced through the void. It was a bronze spear stained with dark golden blood. This was an ancient artifact used by the ancestors of the Overlord Ancestral Hall, and it had once pierced through a sacred body. The bronze spear pierced toward Jun Xiaoyao's chest at lightning speed. This could be said to be a killing move that caught people off guard. Jun Xiaoyaro snorted coldly, raised his hand, and directly grabbed the bronze spear with both hands. The bronze spear shook violently, and a sharp aura erupted, shaking Jun Xiaoyao's palm slightly numb, but he was unable to shake it off. Jun Xiaoyaro turned his hand, supported it with divine power, and threw it at Long Yarrow. Poof! The sound of an artifact piercing flesh was heard. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Long Yarrow was directly pierced by the bronze spear and nailed to the mountain in the distance. Although it did not penetrate a fatal part, it still made Long Yarrow spit out large mouthfuls of blood mixed with broken organs. She was in a state of absent-minded disbelief. This son of God said, "You are a dog for one day, a dog for life." His words were like steel needles, deeply piercing into Long Yarrow's heart. Her defense was broken again, and her Dao heart was about to collapse. It was fine if she lost the first time. Now that she had awakened her bloodline, her strength was even stronger than before, but she still lost. Moreover, it was in such a direct and humiliating way. A person who is going to die still dares to be so arrogant. Jun Xiaoyao, let me see your strength. Ji Daoyi stepped out, and his aura was extremely powerful. As the successor of the human immortal sect, he even had the background of a forbidden family. His strength was unfathomable. Enough. If you really want to take turns to fight, you have to ask for our opinion first. Jun Lingsang and Lord Grimm stepped out. As for Jun Qingyang and Jun Yinhuang of the Jun family's hidden lineage, they did not step out. Especially Jun Qingyang, whose eyes were filled with a complicated look. She was very grateful to Jun Xiaoyao, but she also knew what might happen next. Brother Jun is not fighting alone. Yu Huanwang stepped out as well. Haha, this is a matter between the 7 rebellious emperors and Jun Xiaoyao. The rest of you should stay out of it. On the Xianting's side, Kang Li, Yarou Qing, Xing Lu, and the other successors of the immortal orthodoxies also stepped out, opposing Jun Lingsang and the others. That's right. I also want to see this show. Pu Yarou smiled slightly. This was the first time he had seen such a show, and he naturally wanted to see the result. Seeing the situation, Jun Lingsang and Lord Grimm's faces darkened. The situation was extremely unfavorable for Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao, the reason why you're so famous is because I haven't been born yet. Ji Daoi's body shook, and a total of 10 streaks of immortal qi burst out at the same time, and the power was earth-shattering. Many people were extremely shocked. 10 streaks of immortal qi? Is he still human? However, Jun Xiaoyao, who saw this scene, had a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Chapter 874. Right now, around Ji Daoi's body, 10 streaks of immortal energy were like dragons, winding about the surface of his body. It was extremely shocking, eye-catching. 9 is an extreme number. Ji Daoi actually broke through the limit of 9. On immortal domain's side, a few heavenly talents were shocked. This type of monster, even in the past great eras, it was hard for even a few of them to appear worthy of being the human immortal body. There were also people who sighed with admiration. The human immortal body was similarly a powerful physique, good at cultivating immortal energy, guiding immortal energy to refine the body, forging an unmatched precious body. It could be said that in terms of flesh, the human immortal body wasn't much weaker than the sacred body and tyrant body. It wasn't just immortal domain side, even on the other side, many creatures revealed shocked expressions. In this era of great competition, immortal domain has produced a few figures. Pu Yarou said calmly. However, his expression was still calm, because his cultivation was at the half-supreme being realm, still a bit stronger than immortal domain's heavenly talents. Is this what you're relying on? Jun Xiaoyao laughed. In his opinion, Ji Daoi's flaunting was like a player who had just left a novice village, mocking a max-level big shot. Immortal energy, I also have it. Jun Xiaoyao's body trembled. Flesh immortal energy, all life source energy, reincarnation immortal energy, void immortal energy, sin karma immortal energy, ascension immortal energy, devouring immortal energy, great Tao immortal energy, life and death immortal energy, creation immortal energy, world immortal energy, origin magnetic immortal energy. A total of 12 streaks of immortal energy erupted at the same time. They were like 12 giant immortal energy dragons, appearing around Jun Xiaoyao's body. Heavenly flowers fell, golden lotuses surged from the ground, immortal radiance surging, great Tao order interweaving. Right now, Jun Xiaoyao was like a peerless white-clothed immortal king who walked out from ancient history, transcendent and unmatched, shocking everyone here. Deathly silence, no one could make a sound. 12 streaks of immortal energy, it was enough to topple all knowledge. If 10 streaks of immortal energy was breaking the limits of heaven and earth, then what were 12 streaks of immortal energy considered? Monster, variable. They felt like all adjectives weren't enough to describe Jun Xiaoyao's stunning pillousness. Regardless of whether it was immortal domain or the other side, everyone's minds rumbling, trembling, as if millions and millions of lightning bolts rumbling. This feeling was too unreal. It was as if he was facing a living legend. Even Pu Yarou was stunned, let alone the ordinary prodigies. It seemed like even among their 10 heavenly kings, there weren't many who were as freakish as Jun Xiaoyao, right? Tushan Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes shone even brighter. With such heaven-defying aptitude, he definitely had the ability to elevate the 5 sisters to the extreme. This is impossible. I have the human immortal body, the human immortal body that is best at cultivating immortal qi. Ji Dao was stunned. He had been cultivating in seclusion for so long in order to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, and he had indeed done it. When he was born, his 10 strands of immortal chi shook the entire ancient ultimate road. This made countless old antiques sigh in admiration. They believed that he would become the wave maker of this world of great battles, an absolute main character. But now, he looked at the 12 strands of immortal energy around Jun Xiaoyao. Ji Daoyi was puzzled, sinking into deep self-doubt. After all, Jun Xiaoyao was too monstrous. Or was he too trashy? No, 12 strands of immortal chi. There's definitely something strange. You can't perfectly use the power of 12 strands of immortal chi, Ji Daoyi said as if he was trying to comfort himself. Cultivating immortal chi didn't mean that one could perfectly use its power. As the human immortal body, he could naturally fully use the power of 10 strands of immortal chi. When Jun Xiaoyao saw this, his eyes were still filled with mockery. The weak would always find excuses for themselves. And the strong would ignore everything. One move is enough to deal with you. Jun Xiaoyao slowly raised his hand. His 5 fingers were slightly bent, as if gathering power. Rumble. The power of 12 strands of immortal chi began to converge on Jun Xiaoyao's raised palm. Blinding immortal light burst out, and a boundless and terrifying power was brewing. Like a storm of immortal chi, but also like a vortex. 12 strands of immortal chi spun and converged on Jun Xiaoyao's palm. Not good. Ji Daoyi felt an extreme sense of danger. Jun Xiaoyao could also perfectly use the power of 12 strands of immortal chi. Heavenly Dao technique. Without hesitation, Ji Daoyi used his family's forbidden technique. The 10 strands of immortal chi merged into one. Immortal light surged, and the shadow of a god appeared vaguely. The light of the great Dao flickered, and thousands of divine chains of order intertwined. This taboo technique was extremely powerful, but Jun Xiaoyao only punched out. The 12 strands of immortal chi coiled around his arm like dragons. The blinding immortal light drowned the entire area. Rumble. In the end, only the deafening sound of explosions could be heard, as well as the sound of the void shattering. Blood splattered, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Ji Daoyi was sent flying like a kite with a broken string, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was like cracked porcelain, and there were wounds everywhere. Blood was flowing out. He was in an extremely sorry state. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have thought that. This successor of the human immortal sect would be beaten to such a sorry state by one move. This, the saintess of the human immortal sect, Ji Qingyi, was also present. Her clear eyes were also filled with surprise. Although on the surface, Ji Daoyi was strong enough to deal with Jun Xiaoyao. But in her heart, she didn't think that Ji Daoyi could defeat Jun Xiaoyao. But Ji Qingyi didn't expect that Ji Daoyi couldn't even take one move from Jun Xiaoyao. This was a little ridiculous. This was a prodigy who had cultivated 10 strands of immortal chi. Seeing this, Ji Tiezi's pupils constricted, and his expression became more serious than before. But when he thought of his trump card, Ji Tiezi was still very calm. Cough cough. Ji Daoyi was a little dazed. If it weren't for the intense pain in his body that pulled him back to reality, he might even think that he was dreaming. Defeated in one move. What kind of humiliation was this to him? Ji Daoyi's face turned pale. He felt that his birth was a joke. He was just Jun Xiaoyao's stepping stone. No, actually, he wasn't even a stepping stone. Because Jun Xiaoyao didn't care about him at all. He didn't purposely use him as a stepping stone. From the beginning to the end, he was the one who took the initiative to give Jun Xiaoyao a slap in the face. This was no different from asking for a beating. Thinking of this, Ji Daoyi was so angry that he couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. Jun Xiaoyao didn't care about Ji Daoyi, and he didn't care about his background. He looked at Ji Tiezi and said calmly, Ji Tiezi, you should also want to fight. Then come at me. Unexpectedly, Ji Tiezi smiled and said, Jun Xiaoyao, do you think I'm so naive? Since the heavens have appointed the 7 sovereigns, then the 7 sovereigns naturally have to fight together to deal with you. I won't show off and fight alone. Gu Tiezi's words surprised many people. They thought that Gu Tiezi was proud and arrogant, and would also fight Jun Xiaoyaro alone. But now it seemed that Gu Tiezi's plan was obviously deeper. In his opinion, face and whatnot weren't as important as the result. There were thousands of history books, but the winner was king and the loser was in the wrong. This kind of person was the most dangerous. Because in order to achieve his goal, he would use all kinds of schemes. He wouldn't have a bottom line. Oh, you mean that the 7 sovereigns are all here? Jun Xiaoyao's gaze swept across the scene. It seemed that the identities of the 7 sovereigns would be completely revealed today. Chapter 875. To be honest, ever since the game between Jun Xiaoyaro and the heavens began, everyone was curious. Everyone was curious about who the 7 defiant emperors were. After all, the 7 defiant emperors chosen by the heavens were obviously not ordinary people. You will know. Attack. Gu Tiezi said and attacked first. Li hexagram, heavenly fire. Gu Tiezi attacked. The crimson runes of the Li hexagram appeared in the void and turned into flames that could burn the world. The Fuxi sacred body controlled the power of the 8 trigrams. It could freely control the 8 natural forces between heaven and earth. It was extremely powerful. Gu Tiezi was like an emperor who controlled the 8 extremes. His power was monstrous, and his attack shocked everyone. As expected of the successor of the Fuxi celestial legacy, many people's eyes were filled with shock. Gu Tiezi and Ling Yang were the core prodigies of the Xian Ting. The number of times Gu Tiezi attacked could be counted on one hand. Not many people knew his true strength. Now that the tip of the iceberg was revealed, it was indeed shocking. Jun Xiaoyao, no matter what, you won't be able to escape today. Ji Daoyi took a pill. His blood surged, and his immortal light flowed. His human immortal body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, he let out a long roar and followed closely behind. Behind him, Long Yarrow also pulled out the bronze battle spear from her body. Her dragon blood and tyrant blood boiled. She also made her move. Then, a person in a black robe took off her robe and revealed her figure. It was a pale girl holding the scythe of death. It was Xian Yu. She let out a sigh. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro did not leave the world of the ruins of God as she said. Xian Yu also made her move. In an instant, 4 top prodigies had already made their move. Do you really think we don't exist? Jun Lingtsang, Lord Grim, and the others took a step forward. However, Kang Li, Yarrow Qing, Wei Chanxian, Xing Lu, and the other successors of the Celestial Legacy blocked them. Today, the legend will end. Obviously, the Xian Ting was serious this time. If Jun Xiaoyaro did not die, he would undoubtedly become the top figure of the Jun family in the future. It would not be good for the Xian Ting's hegemonic rule. Come, come. Let's see who can take the life of the Son of God today. Jun Xiaoyao's body trembled, and a silver, slender armor that glowed with 7-colored divine light emerged from his body. It was the rainbow sacred dragon armor. Jun Xiaoyaro then flipped his wrist, and a surge of primordial killing intent that could shake the heavens burst out. It was Boundary Emperor Halberd at that moment. Jun Xiaoyaro, who was clad in armor and holding a halberd in his hand, looked like a reincarnated god of war. His aura filled the air and shook the entire place. Kill. The Emperor Lingtsang Kang. With a sweep of the great Baron halberd, the sharp halberd radiance destroyed everything in its path and destroyed the attacks of the ancient prince and the rest. Kai. Gu Tiezi opened his mouth and took out an 8-trigram sword. Elemental energy swirled around it. His figure shuddered as 10 streams of immortal qi appeared too. This was enough to shock everyone. Ji Daoyi was able to cultivate 10 strands of immortal qi because he had the human immortal body and was best at cultivating immortal qi. As for Gu Tiezi, he could actually cultivate 10 strands of immortal qi. This was enough to prove his monstrous talent. If it wasn't for Jun Xiaoyaro, Gu Tiezi's brilliance would definitely not be overshadowed. Human immortal fist. The moment Ji Dao punched out, his dharmic powers exploded. It was as if a human immortal was punching out, destroying the heavens. 9 great godly forms. Long Yao also unleashed her ultimate moves. The Kuanpeng divine form, the Great Beldao body, the True Dragon Dharma body, the Immortal Phoenix feather and many other divine forms appeared. On the other hand, Mystic Moon simply slashed down with her scythe. It could be said that even a pseudo-utmost exalt would have to treat the attacks of the four seriously. Jun Xiaoyao infused his dharmic powers into the Great Baron Halberd. A terrifying destructive power burst out. It was as if a fiend god had descended to the world and cut off the world. Rumble. It was as if 100 nuclear bombs had exploded at the same time, or countless planets had been destroyed at the same time. The world was filled with a destructive force field. If it weren't for the world tree, this place would have definitely collapsed. Ling Yang, what are you waiting for? Don't forget about the position of the young king, Jiyu Tiezi yelled. He had reached an agreement with Ling Yang before. He would give up the position of the young king, but Ling Yang would help him kill Jun Xiaoyao. Ling Yang, who came back to her senses, showed a hint of hesitation in her eyes and clenched her fists tightly. Ling Yuan bit her red lips as she looked at the white-clothed man who was sweeping through everything in his path. Then, she still made a move. She waved her hand and the deity palm of Empress Wa pressed down. The fifth of the 7 defiant emperors had joined the battle. Jun Xiaoyao wasn't surprised to see Ling Yang make a move. However, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Then, another person made a move. However, this person had exceeded everyone's expectations. Jun Yinhuang. How is this possible? Lord Grimm and Jun Lingsang's expressions changed when they saw this. Could it be, I'm sorry. Jun Yinhuang slowly raised his hand, and a seal of proving Dao floated in his palm. Jun Yinhuang of the Jun family's hidden branch was actually one of the 7 defiant emperors. Hiss! Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. This was definitely beyond their expectations. Haha, Jun Xiaoyao, what do you think? Is this a joke from the heavens? Jiyu Tiezi couldn't help but laugh. What did it mean to be a joke? This was a joke from the heavens. Aren't you very powerful? Then why did the heavens appoint a member of the Jun family as one of the 7 defiant emperors? If Jun Xiaoyao really killed Jun Yinhuang, then he wouldn't be able to let the Jun family's hidden branch return to the main branch. Jun Yinhuang and Jun Shenming were not on the same level at all. Jun Yinhuang was one of the 2 talents of the Jun family's hidden branch. It wouldn't matter if Jun Xiaoyao killed Jun Shenming, but if he killed Jun Yinhuang, then the impact would be huge. It might even lead to a complete split between the main branch and the hidden branch of the Jun family. This was also why Jiyu Tiezi had such a conjecture when the 7 defiant emperors were gathered. He vaguely felt that the aura of the black-robed man was of the same lineage as the Jun family. Therefore, he guessed that there was a member of the 7 defiant emperors in the Jun family. This was the situation he wanted to see. Without any hesitation, Jun Yinhuang made a move. Jun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change much when he saw this. Jiyu Tiezi sneered, Jun Xiaoyao, now you should know how stupid it is to fight with the heavens. You will never win against the heavens. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold as he said indifferently, it's still unknown who will win and who will lose. You are still so confident. Jiyu Tiezi narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't know why, but there was a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart. He felt as if he had miscalculated something. However, no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't figure out how Jun Xiaoyao could turn the situation around. Then, the 6 of them attacked at the same time, forming a tide of magic power that was enough to drown this part of the world. Jun Xiaoyao's qi and blood turned into a long dragon that soared into the sky. With the support of the power of the Sumeru realm, the Great Baron Halberd could split open an ancient planet with life. At this moment, the extreme battle broke out. Suddenly, a light shadow with the Emperor's aura stabbed toward Jun Xiaoyao's back. It was a long spear that seemed to be condensed from dazzling brilliance and entwined with divine chains of order. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to be unable to react at all. The 7-colored sacred dragon armor was pierced through by the light spear. Jun Xiaoyao's body shook, but his expression didn't change. However, with a faint sense of regret, he sighed. Sure enough, friends are a luxury. Jun Xiaoyao slowly turned his head and looked at the handsome silver-haired figure behind him. Chapter 876. This sudden scene caused the entire place to go deathly silent for a moment. The most unexpected scene happened. The person who shouldn't have attacked Jun Xiaoyao actually attacked Jun Xiaoyao. This. Jun Lingsang, Lord Grim, and the others had a sharp look in their eyes. This was also beyond their expectations. Not only them, but even Gu Tiezi and the other candidates of the Seven Sovereigns were a little shocked. This was because they didn't guess the identity of the last black-robed man during the secret meeting of the Seven Sovereigns. Now, the identity of the last of the Seven Sovereigns was finally revealed. It was the Ascendant Jin Dynasty's Ascendant King. No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. How could my brother be one of the Seven Sovereigns? If one were to ask who was the most affected out of everyone present, it would be Yu Yunchang. Her beautiful face was deathly pale, as if all the blood had been drained from it. Her body couldn't support it anymore and her eyes were trembling silently. One of them was her brother whom she respected the most and admired since she was young. The other was the man who made her heart beat for the first time. Why did this happen? Yu Yunchang couldn't take it. The Ascendant King's silver hair danced in the wind. He was handsome and his face was so handsome that it felt unreal. He was one of the few people in the immortal realm who was close to Jun Xiaoyao in terms of looks. Of course, his strength was also unfathomable. The light spear was intertwined with divine chains of order and had snow-white feathers dancing in the wind. That was the imprint of the Ascendant Jin Dynasty's imperial weapon, the Ascendant God Spear. It was said that anyone who was pierced by the real Ascendant God Spear would die, leaving only feathers on the ground. Although the Ascendant King was only holding the imprint of the Ascendant God Spear, it was still powerful enough. What surprised the Ascendant King was that his Ascendant God Spear imprint couldn't pierce through Jun Xiaoyao's body. Furthermore, judging from Jun Xiaoyao's expression, he didn't seem to be too surprised. "You already knew?" the Ascendant King asked. "So what if I knew? So what if I didn't? Is there a difference?" Jun Xiaoyao smiled. It was hard to tell if that smile was mocking or something else. Jun Xiaoyao was well aware of some things. However, he was unwilling to say it out loud. After all, Jun Xiaoyao was standing too high. There were too few people who were qualified to be his friend. Truth be told, when the 10 princes of Jinwu and the others tried to encircle and kill you on the buried Emperor Star, I was prepared to act. However, after seeing how easily you crushed them, I feel that I should get to know you better. Perhaps being friends with you is not a bad choice, the Feather King said indifferently. What a pity. Jun Xiaoyao shook his head slightly. What's a pity? Ascension King asked. If you continue to hide like this, I can actually pretend that I don't know. After all, friends are indeed very extravagant, but I, Jun Xiaoyao, hate betrayal even more. Jun Xiaoyao's saintly body shook, and violent ripples of magic power spread out. The Ascendant King was pushed back and there was a grave expression in his eyes. No. Big brother, don't do it. Yu Yunchang pleaded. She was unwilling to see such a scene. Yunchang, there are many things that are beyond one's control. If you don't fight, you will be eliminated. The Ascendant King did not regret his decision. No one was willing to be buried in obscurity. In this era of great competition, only by going all out would one have the possibility of rising up. Gu Tiezi, Ling Yang, Ji Daoyi, Long Yaro Shen Yu, Jun Yinhuang, and the Ascendant King. The 7 most powerful sky prides attacked at the same time. The pressure was self-evident. Even Pu Yaro's expression would change. Come, all of you. Let this son of God see how capable the 7 chess pieces arranged by the heavens are. Jun Xiaoyao wore the 7-colored sacred dragon armor and held the great desolate halberd in his hand. Behind him, the immortal king descending 9 heavens avatar appeared. Then, yin-yang rotated and the yin-yang diagram of life and death appeared. Chaotic aura spread out and green lotuses bloomed. Chaotic seed green lotuses. Around him, the illusory figures of the myriad Tao sages appeared. Reverence of the myriad sages. The 4 sacred physique avatars appeared at the same time. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao was fighting against the 7 sovereigns of destiny by himself. Jun Xiaoyao, You alone can't overturn the heavens. Gu Tiez's voice was mighty. The Fushi 8 Trigram's avatar appeared behind him. Ling Yang gritted her teeth. Immortal light also surged behind her. Another avatar appeared. It was a blurry female immortal who was mending the heavens with one hand. Empress Wa's sacred physique avatar, Newer mending the heavens. In addition, Ji Daoi also let out a long roar to vent the humiliation and hatred in his heart. Behind him, a human immortal avatar appeared. It was majestic as if it had descended from the immortal world. Long Yarrow and the others also had their own avatars as their trump cards. It could be said that this was an unprecedented battle. It shook the heavens and the earth, and the universe was destroyed. Even the space was on the verge of collapse. The entire surface of the Lotus the Archplanet was starting to crack. At the same time that the battle broke out on the Lotus the Archplanet. In a space not far from the Lotus the Archplanet, a beautiful figure hurriedly swept across the void. It was a young girl as beautiful as a fairy. She wore a moon-white light gauze dress, and her face was almost perfect. Her figure was excellent, and her pair of white silk legs were perfect. It was Fairy Yuan. She felt her heart beating very fast, as if something bad was about to happen. Young Master Jun, Fairy Yuan flew through the void with an anxious look on her face. She had to stop it. Although with her strength, she might not be able to change anything. But she still had a way that could change the situation. Therefore, she had to find Jun Xiaoyao. Just as Fairy Yuan was flying unswervingly in the direction of the Lotus the Archplanet, an icy voice could be heard all of a sudden. "You are Fairy Yuan." Hearing this voice, Fairy Yuan's expression changed. When she turned her head, she saw the chaotic aura behind her surging like a tide. A figure stepped out from it. The 10 princes of Jinwu. Fairy Yuan's face instantly turned ugly. "Why are you in such a hurry? Are you going to find Jun Xiaoyao? Very well, let me let you die in front of him. I wonder if he will feel pain." The 10 princes of Jinwu raised his hand, and the chaotic aura surged, turning into a law hand that grabbed Fairy Yuan. Looking at Fairy Yuan's exquisite face, the 10 princes of Jinwu hated Jun Xiaoyao even more. The reason was simple. After that nightmare, the 10 princes of Jinwu had completely withered. Even if there was a beautiful girl like Fairy Yuan in front of him, he had no interest at all. He had completely lost his instincts as a male. He didn't even have the mood to humiliate Fairy Yuan. This was very miserable. Right now, the 10 princes of Jinwu only wanted Jun Xiaoyao to taste pain 1,000,000 times worse than him. "No, it's impossible to use me to threaten young Master Jun." Fairy Yuan, who was caught, calmed down. She understood that her weight in Jun Xiaoyao's heart was not nothing, but it was definitely not much. At most, she could only leave a trace in Jun Xiaoyao's heart. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was the light that saved her life. "Haha, I can't wait to watch this good show." The 10 princes of Jinwu's expression was twisted and cold. The wings on his back shook, and he turned into a swift stream of light, breaking through space and flying towards the Qing Emperor planet. However, what even the 10 princes of Jinwu did not notice was, not long after he left, a figure quietly appeared. "The time is about right," the figure murmured. If the 10 princes of Jinwu were here, he would definitely scream. This was the mysterious seed-level prodigy. Chapter 877. The surroundings of the Lotus Emperor planet were currently engulfed in the flames of war. The knights of the immortal realm and the soldiers at the border were fighting against the army of the foreign realm. Meanwhile, on the Lotus Emperor planet, Jun Xiaoyao was fighting against the 7 emperors. He had to admit that the 7 emperors appointed by the heavenly will were all very strong. If they were to grow up, they would be the rising stars of this era. Meanwhile, Jun Xiaoyao was taking on the 7 peerless geniuses on his own. Even the prodigies from the other side felt an inexplicable sense of admiration for such boldness. Luckily, his from the immortal realm. Otherwise, even the 7 minor monarchs would lose a lot of their glory, let alone the 10 heavenly kings. Pu Yarrow exclaimed. Only the seeds of the immortal realm could stand a chance against the 10 heavenly kings of the foreign realm. As for the 7 minor monarchs, They were the best of the best among the younger generation of the foreign realm. Only the strongest seeds of the immortal realm could barely stand a chance against them. If a peerless genius like Jun Xiaoyaro was in the foreign realm, they would do everything they could to nurture him. The funny thing is, the Nine Heavens immortal realm is trying to kill him. Tushan Xiaoxiao shook her head with a hint of disdain. That's why I said the people of the immortal realm are short-sighted and idiotic. But it's fine too, we can get rid of a great threat, Pu Yarrow said. He only needed to watch the show. As for the Tree of World, even though Pu Yarrow was eager to claim it. However, if he made a move, the immortal realm would not just sit still and watch him claim the Tree of World. They might even stop fighting among themselves and turn their attention to him. Therefore, Pu Yarrow would rather wait for an outcome before making his move. Time was on the foreign realm's side. Rumble. Different colors surged on the battlefield as the chains of order intertwined with one another. The brilliance of the great Tao flickered. The scene was absolutely terrifying. Even the chaos chi was unleashed. It surged wildly and surged like an ocean. A battle of this level was the strongest among the younger generation. It was rare to see something like this even after a few eras. Jun Xiaoyaro was wearing the sacred seven-colored dragon armor. He was swinging the great desolation halberd like an unstoppable immortal emperor. A single swing of the halberd destroyed the surroundings. On top of the power of his sacred flesh and the immortal body of the great immortal realm. Every move cut the void into pieces. Of course, Jiu Tiezi and the others were not weak either. Any one of them would be an outstanding figure, let alone 7 of them at the same time. Even a quasi-supreme would be completely suppressed. Kuan Trigram, Sand Waterfall Sky Burial. Jiu Tiezi performed another divination in the void of space. Suddenly, the ground caved in, and countless amounts of sand rolled up like a waterfall, wanting to bury Jun Xiaoyaro within it. Jun Xiaoyao's qi and blood filled the sky. The yin-yang life and death diagram behind him rotated and pressed down to block the attack. 9 godly forms, seal the heavens and decimate the earth. Long Yarrow used the ultimate move of the tyrant body and the 9 divine apparitions turned into an immortal cage, trying to seal Jun Xiaoyaro inside. Jun Xiaoyaro punched out, shattering the void and blasting the divine form away. 1 heavenly Dao spell, falling celestial finger, around Ji Daoi, 10 streaks of celestial qi surged, gathering to form a huge finger. It was as if a celestial had crossed over from the celestial realm, and this finger shot out murderously. A single finger could cause an immortal to fall. Jun Xiaoyaro also pointed out with his finger, and lightning raged, shaking the heavens. Lightning Emperor's great mystique, Lightning Emperor finger. The 2 huge fingers collided in the void, and huge waves erupted. It was as if a lightning emperor and a human immortal were exchanging blows, and the shockwaves were extremely terrifying. Feather Immortal Scripture. The Feather Monarch also used his ultimate move. He had obtained the inheritance of the Feather Jin dynasty's immortal, the Feather Monarch, on the buried Emperor star. The Feather Monarch wasn't the most famous among the emperors, and he was very low-key. However, his strength was definitely terrifying among the emperors. The inheritance he left behind was naturally also terrifying. Countless streaks of ascension light appeared around the Feather Monarch. Every streak of ascension light was enough to easily kill a sage. Countless streaks of ascension light shot towards Jun Xiaoyaro. Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyaro activated his supreme bone. It was as if there was a bright sun hidden in his chest. Divine light surged, and thousands of streaks of auspicious colors appeared. The glaring light of calamity burst out from Jun Xiaoyao's chest and collided with the streaks of ascension light. It could be said that Jun Xiaoyaro was going all out at this moment. The power of the sacred body of the ancients and the supreme bone were both activated. For a moment, the 7 defiant emperors were completely unable to suppress Jun Xiaoyaro. This is ridiculous. Not to mention those from the immortal region, even the prodigies from the foreign domain were a little speechless. Jun Xiaoyao's strength was just too terrifying. He wasn't at a disadvantage even when fighting against 7 people alone. On the contrary, he looked very calm. Jiu Tiezi's eyes darkened when he saw this. However, he wasn't surprised. Zhang Xiaoyao's strength couldn't be judged by common sense. He didn't expect that the 7 defiant emperors alone would be able to kill Zhang Xiaoyao. Everyone, don't hold back anymore. Show me what you've got, Jiyu Tiezi said. After he finished speaking, he took out his trump card first. A stone tablet with an extremely powerful aura appeared in the void. It was the imprint of the imperial weapon of the Fuxi immortal lineage, the Fuxi Dragon Tablet. The Fuxi Dragon Tablet was also very famous among the imperial weapons. It was even the strongest among the imperial weapons. It was rumored that it had reached the level of a quasi-immortal weapon. The Fuxi Dragon Tablet appeared in the void. It had a terrifying aura that could suppress heaven and earth. The pressure was extremely strong. Ling Yang sighed in her heart when she saw this. Auspicious clouds bloomed between her snow-white eyebrows. A 5-colored strange stone emitted endless rays of light. Thousands of rays of light and thousands of auspicious colors. It was the newer Daoist stone, the imperial weapon of Emperor Wa's immortal lineage. The newer Daoist stone was on par with the Fuxi Dragon Tablet. It was rumored that both of them had reached the level of a quasi-immortal weapon. Of course, Ling Yang didn't use the imprint of the Celestial Emperor's throne. She didn't know why, but it was difficult for her to kill Zhang Xiaoyao. Long Yarrow took out the bronze spear that was stained with sacred blood. At the same time, the bell hanging on her neck fell off. It was the imperial weapon of the Overlord Ancestral Hall, the imprint of the Overlord Bell. Ascension King took out the imperial weapon, the Ascension God Spear. The others also used their own methods. It could be said that the battle had reached a white-hot level. Zhang Xiaoyao smirked as he sensed the destructive shockwaves. His eyes were filled with disdain. He was like an emperor looking down on these rebellious subjects. Zhang Xiaoyao raised his hand. In the center of his palm, runes shone brightly. Then, the brilliance surged and turned into a battle axe. The imprint of the imperial weapon, ancient chaos axe. An aura that could destroy everything in all directions appeared. At the same time, a shocking battle intent burst out. That was the unyielding will that belonged to the ancient Chaos Emperor. That was the undying battle intent of the ancient Chaos Emperor that could fight against heaven and earth. This battle intent coincided with Zhang Xiaoyao's boldness. Fighting against the heavens was endless fun. Come, this son of God will give you a chance to fight against the gods. Within Zhang Xiaoyao's body, there seemed to be the sound of worlds colliding. The power of Sumeru worlds appeared and supported the ancient Chaos Axe imprint. Even the space was destroyed. This was the power of 260 Sumeru worlds. It was enough to crush heaven and earth. Zhang Xiaoyao's axe fell, shaking heaven and earth and destroying the vast expanse. The mighty axe light fell, wanting to split everything in the world and cut the void. The 7 emperors also made their moves. All kinds of imperial weapon imprints bloomed with dazzling divine light. The power of the two sides collided fiercely in a shocking way. Heaven and earth turned upside down, destroying mountains and rivers. Chapter 878. This kind of extreme collision was hard to imagine. On one side was Zhang Xiaoyao, who was attacking with all his strength, using the power of 260 Sumeru worlds to support the ancient Chaos Axe imprint. On the other side were the 7 emperors, who activated many emperor weapon imprints, their power surging. The two sides collided, and dazzling light surged. And the strange thing was, the entire world had fallen into an abnormal deathly silence. The energy fluctuations of the two sides collided silently and were annihilated. Retreat for now. Seeing this, Pu Yarrow's pupils constricted. That kind of silent fusion and collision was simply like nuclear fusion. It was brewing for an even more terrifying explosion. The foreign side quickly retreated. Meanwhile, the celestial realms side also retreated quickly, fearing that they would be affected. Drip, drip, drip. Time seemed to have turned into a tangible sound, echoing in everyone's hearts bit by bit. After dozens of breaths. At the center of the collision, it was as if a sun had exploded. The blazing explosion of light first suddenly collapsed, and then rapidly expanded and spread. Boom, 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 boom. An indescribable explosion erupted, as if an ancient god was roaring angrily. Many heavens' prides screamed, covering their ears with their hands. Blood flowed out from the gaps between their fingers. Their eardrums burst from the deafening sound. Rumble. Destructive ripples spread out, and wherever they passed, the earth was annihilated into dust. Even the world tree that oversaw this place began to shake violently, and chaotic energy spread out, surging violently. The center of the explosion seemed to have turned into a death void. All kinds of spatial turbulence surged, and broken laws of order swept chaotically. Some heavens' prides who didn't have time to retreat were directly swallowed by the destructive waves, and they couldn't even let out a scream. Is this really a battle between the younger generation? Many heavens' prides' throats were dry, and they swallowed hard. Even a battle between supreme beings wasn't this terrifying, right? It could be said that if it weren't for the world tree's suppression, the entire Azure Emperor planet would have exploded. What's the result? Everyone's eyes were fixed on the center of the explosion. Just the aftermath alone could destroy everything. What about the 7 sovereigns and Jun Xiaoyaro, then? Who won and who lost? Everyone held their breaths. Under such a tension, the smoke and dust dispersed. The figures of the 7 emperors appeared. It had to be said that the 7 emperors appointed by the heavens were truly powerful. Even though they were in a sorry state, with injuries on their bodies and blood flowing from the corners of their mouths, they were still able to fight back. But overall, his injuries weren't too serious. After all, if the 7 of them worked together, they could share some of the damage. However, the eyes of the 7 emperors were also firmly fixed on the other side. The 7 emperors could share the damage. But Jun Xiaoyaro had shouldered everything by himself. Not only did he have to bear the brunt of the 7 emperors' killing moves, but he also had to bear the brunt of the destructive shockwaves. Under such an attack, even a quasi-supreme martial artist would be severely injured or even on the verge of death. At that instant, the geniuses and the 7 emperors glanced toward it. Crack! The sound of something breaking could be heard. Many people's hearts skipped a beat. Jun Lingsang and Lord Grimm felt their hearts tighten. Jun Xiaoyao's figure was finally revealed. The 7-colored sacred dragon armor on his body was covered in cracks. Then, with a cracking sound, it shattered and turned into specks of light. But Jun Xiaoyaro himself, his white robes spotless, his handsome face calm. He wasn't in a sorry state. He wasn't injured. And he wasn't lying in a pool of blood like everyone had expected. The only change was that the armor on his body had shattered. The joint attack of the 7 emperors only shattered the 7-colored sacred dragon armor on Jun Xiaoyao's body. F***CK. F***CK. Is Jun Xiaoyaro still human? Some geniuses gasped, their eyes almost popping out of their socket. Even a quasi-supreme martial artist would be severely injured or on the verge of death. Jun Xiaoyao's armor was only shattered. That was too F***king ridiculous. Even storytellers wouldn't dare to brag like that. However, the truth was right in front of them. Jun Xiaoyaro stood with his hands behind his back, the great desolate halberd pointed diagonally to the ground. His white robes were spotless, without a speck of dust. He was like an invincible god of war who had been standing since ancient times. Even someone as scheming as Jiu Tiezi had an extremely unnatural expression on his face at that moment. They had gone all out. They had even taken out a few imperial armament imprints. However, Jun Xiaoyao's armor was only shattered and he wasn't injured at all. Damn it, what kind of monster is he? Ji Daoyi couldn't keep calm. The 7 of them had joined forces to challenge Jun Xiaoyao, but they couldn't even injure him. This was simply too ridiculous. However, what the 7 emperors and everyone else didn't know was, some of the Sumeru worlds in Jun Xiaoyao's body had already shattered. The Sumeru worlds were not only for strength, but also for defense. Any attack that landed on Jun Xiaoyao's body would first have to break through the layers of Sumeru worlds before it could hurt him. The joint attack of the 7 emperors was indeed terrifying. More than 100 Sumeru worlds in Jun Xiaoyao's body had shattered. He wouldn't be able to recover in a short time. However, Jun Xiaoyao didn't care. Even if all the Sumeru worlds were shattered, his physical body was still powerful enough and his recovery ability was also very strong. Not to mention that he had also cultivated the divine spirit immortality technique in the life book. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't afraid at all. Show me your real trump card. Just this alone won't make me happy. Jun Xiaoyaro stood in the void with his hands behind his back. He was like a big boss looking down at the 7 warriors who had challenged him. He had learned from Shen Yu that the 7 emperors had an extremely terrifying joint attack formation. That had piqued Jun Xiaoyao's interest. Gu Tiez's expression also became a lot more serious. Just as he was about to let everyone use their ultimate moves, a cold and twisted voice suddenly sounded from afar. Jun Xiaoyao, oh Jun Xiaoyao, I've finally found you. This somewhat familiar voice made Jun Xiaoyao raise his eyebrows. Everyone also looked over, their faces filled with surprise. That's the 10 princes of Jinwu? How is that possible? Didn't the 10 princes of Jinwu suffer a crushing defeat at the hands of Jun Xiaoyao? Why is he here now? No, he's surrounded by chaotic energy. Could it be that the 10 princes of Jinwu has really cultivated the acquired chaotic body? Look at the person imprisoned beside him. That's Fairy Yuan. The arrival of the 10 princes of Jinwu had undoubtedly caused a stir. In fact, many people had almost forgotten about the 10 princes of Jinwu. He had besieged Jun Xiaoyaro on the buried Emperor Star with the Dragon King Palace and the Gulan sect's Sky Prides. In the end, 2 of them died and 1 was severely injured. Of the 10 princes of the Sun God Mountain, he was the only one left. It could be said that he was extremely miserable. After that, no one had seen the 10 princes of Jinwu cause any waves. At this moment, the 10 princes of Jinwu, who had transformed into the acquired chaotic body, had undoubtedly exceeded everyone's expectations. The 10 princes of Jinwu, Jun Xiaoyaro narrowed his eyes coldly. He was not concerned about the 10 princes. He was concerned about the person imprisoned beside him. Fairy Yuan. The 10 princes of Jinwu, let go of her. Ling Yang shouted coldly. The 10 princes of Jinwu did not care. The chaotic energy around him surged and transformed into a large hand that grabbed Fairy Yuan tightly. As long as he used a little bit of strength, he would be able to crush Fairy Yuan like an ant. Jun Xiaoyao, you've killed 9 of my brothers, and you've put me in such a sorry state. All of my tragedies were caused by you. Now, you'd better not act rashly. Otherwise, I'll crush her to death right now. The 10 princes of Jinwu's lips curled into a perverted and cold smile. His temperament was completely twisted. His only goal was to torture and kill Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was expressionless as he looked at Fairy Yuan, who was being held by the chaotic hand. Fairy Yuan's beautiful eyes, which were as bright as stars, were filled with longing and yearning for Jun Xiaoyao. There was also a look of determination. She had made up her mind. Chapter 879. At this moment, the atmosphere fell into silence. No one would have thought that the situation would be so full of twists and turns. First, Jun Xiaoyaro crushed the prodigies of the foreign quasi-emperor clans. Then, there was the civil war of the immortal domain, where the 7 emperors fought against Jun Xiaoyaro. Now, there was another one, the 10 princes of Jinwu, who had cultivated the postnatal chaotic body. He even used Fairy Yuan as a hostage. Many people looked at Jun Xiaoyaro. They knew that Jun Xiaoyaro had once stolen the bride at Gu Tiez's wedding banquet. They would not believe that the 2 of them had nothing to do with each other. 10 princes of Jinwu, if you think you can use Fairy Yuan to threaten this son of God, then you are gravely mistaken. This son of God will not be threatened. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his sleeve, his expression indifferent. The more powerful an expert, the more indifferent they would be. Although Jun Xiaoyaro had not become the kind of expert who could look down on the eternal universe and stand in the long river of time. But in terms of mentality, he already had the mentality of an expert. No one could threaten him. Oh, is that so? The 10 princes of Jinwu's lips curled into a cold smile. He clenched his hand into the void, and the large hand condensed from chaotic energy also closed slightly. Crack. Fairy Yuan's face suddenly turned pale, and her delicate body emitted the sound of bones cracking. Her entire person was like a delicate and fragile porcelain. 10 princes of Jinwu, I will tell you again, stop. Ling Yang's jade face was murderous as she said coldly. Only she, Ling Yang, could decide Fairy Yuan's life and death. If others wanted to harm Fairy Yuan, they would have to ask her first. After all, one had to look at the owner before beating a dog. Not to mention that Fairy Yuan was not just a dog to Ling Yang. She was a valuable tool to her. Ha! The 10 princes of Jinwu completely ignored him. In the past, the 10 princes of Jinwu might have restrained themselves due to Ling Yang's status as the young emperor of Xianting. But now, after that nightmare, the 10 princes of Jinwu's temperament was completely twisted. As long as he could take revenge on Jun Xiaoyao and make Jun Xiaoyao suffer, he would do anything. No one could stop him. He could feel the monstrous resentment of the 10 princes of Jinwu, as well as the faint aura of death in the chaotic aura. Jun Xiaoyao seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Then, his expression became playful. If you want to transform into a postnatal chaotic body, you need to merge the extreme yin and extreme yang. As far as I know, the only known extreme yin sacred body in the immortal realm is Yu Chanhuan. At this point, Jun Xiaoyao looked at the people of the immortal realm. Yu Chanhuan was also present. At this moment, Yu Chanhuan was a little nervous and very confused. She did not understand how the 10 princes of Jinwu had transformed into a postnatal chaotic body. Mph, this be *tch, the 10 princes of Jinwu looked at Yu Chanhuan coldly. After torturing Jun Xiaoyao, he naturally would not let Yu Chanhuan go. And there is a faint aura of death in your chaotic aura. Could it be? Jun Xiaoyao wanted to say something but stopped. However, everyone present was a giant among men. They were all very astute, and there was no way they wouldn't be able to tell what Jun Xiaoyao was implying. Could it be that the Son of God is saying that the 10 princes of Jinwu used a special method to cultivate a postnatal chaotic body? That's right. For example, digging up graves, opening coffins, and unearthing a dead extreme yin sacred body, TSK. Isn't this too hardcore? At the thought of this possibility, everyone could not help but shudder. The 10 princes of Jinwu could even carve. What AF * king talent? Gu Tiezi and the others also had strange expressions. The entire atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Sensing the discussions around him, the veins on the 10 princes of Jinwu's temples throbbed. That kind of anger could not be concealed. This was supposed to be a secret that he buried forever, but the sharp-eyed Jun Xiaoyao immediately noticed it. To the 10 princes of Jinwu, this was simply social death. 10th prince, if you have such a special hobby, then you should go to the ancient burial ground instead, Jun Xiaoyao continued, trying to kill him. Jun Xiaoyao. The 10 princes of Jinwu spat out each word and clenched his fist. Fairy Yuan groaned, and blood dripped from the corner of her lips. This move already pulverized Fairy Maiden Yuan's internal organs. 10th prince, this Son of God guarantees that if you move again, you will suffer a fate worse than death. Jun Xiaoyao's gaze was incomparably sharp, and it pierced out like a knife. Although Jun Xiaoyao was not threatened in any way, it did not mean that he could be indifferent to Fairy Yuan. 10 princes of Jinwu, you should know the consequences of angering me, Ling Yang also shouted coldly. Ha! Ha ha, this prince likes to see you like this. Come on, be angrier, and it's best if you suffer a little more. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao like this, the 10 princes of Jinwu let out a maniacal laugh. This lunatic. Yu Chanhuan was also so angry that her silver teeth chattered. In order to get her, the 10 princes of Jinwu could even launch an immortal war and cause hundreds of millions of people to suffer. It was obvious that his temperament was somewhat twisted, and his arrogance was somewhat abnormal. Such a person would become a lunatic sooner or later. Jun Xiaoyao had only stimulated the 10 princes of Jinwu and caused him to go crazy in advance. I won't talk too much to a lunatic, Jun Xiaoyao said coldly. Is that so? Then now, this prince wants you to stand there obediently and let me make a move. Otherwise, I will kill Fairy Yuan. The 10 princes of Jinwu's face was ferocious, like a vengeful demon. He wanted to tear Jun Xiaoyao apart with his own hands. In the cruelest way, he wanted Jun Xiaoyao to die in front of everyone. The situation froze for a moment. No one would have thought that such a situation would occur. Gu Tiezi frowned slightly, and his eyes flickered. He was thinking about finding an opportunity to kill Jun Xiaoyaro with his own hands. Just as the geniuses of the immortal realm, the geniuses of the foreign domain, the 7 emperors, and the various factions were thinking about the situation. A gentle voice could be heard all of a sudden. It was Fairy Yuan. Although she was injured, her internal organs were shattered, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. However, she smiled. A blood-stained smile. "Young master, are you worried about Yuan?" Jun Xiaoyaro was silent. Fairy Yuan also knew that Jun Xiaoyaro would not compromise with the 10 princes of Jinwu for her. But it didn't matter. To her, as long as Jun Xiaoyaro was a little worried about her, she would be very satisfied and happy. After all, compared to Fairy Yuan's gloomy life, Jun Xiaoyao's appearance was the only light in her life. "Young master, Yuan is really lucky to have met you." Before meeting young master, Yuan had always thought that this life was sad, but it was just someone's sad shadow. Yuan also didn't understand the meaning of living in this world. But now, Yuan understands. The meaning of Yuan's life in this world is to meet young master. When Fairy Yuan said this, she smiled, but tears flowed from her eyes. When they first met, she danced on the brightly lit pavilion. That peerless white-clothed young master sat at the back, quietly watching her dance, his eyes clear. That was the first time Fairy Yuan and Jun Xiaoyaro met. Later, the two of them went on adventures together. Later on, Fairy Yuan was about to leave. Under the starry sky, she danced for Jun Xiaoyaro and kissed him. Then, Gu Tiezi wanted to marry her. Jun Xiaoyaro was like a peerless hero, descending on a 7-colored auspicious cloud and taking her away. Then, he strolled in the starry sky with her. That was the happiest moment in Fairy Yuan's life. And now, looking at the white-clothed young master, her favorite person, Fairy Yuan smiled with tears in her eyes. "All the darkness is left for the past. From the moment I met young master, the cold winter dispersed, and the galaxy was bright." Chapter 880. The cold winter was gone, and the galaxy was bright. Jun Xiaoyaro was the eternal light in Fairy Yuan's heart. Therefore, in order to protect this bit of light, Fairy Yuan was willing to sacrifice everything. Even her own life. Boom. Godly rules of order spread out of Fairy Maiden Yuan's body like daoist fire. Fairy Yuan's delicate body began to burn. Fairy Yuan, Jun Xiaoyaro could not help but change slightly. This scene was beyond everyone's expectations. What's going on? The 10 princes of Jinwu was also stunned for a moment. "Yuan, what are you doing?" Ling Yang reacted and also revealed a look of shock. With a thought, she wanted to stop Fairy Yuan from committing suicide. As long as Ling Yang was willing, Fairy Yuan could not even commit suicide. But, what shocked Ling Yang was that she could not control Fairy Yuan's spontaneous combustion. Fairy Yuan's lips curled into a faint smile. "Ling Yang, do you think you can control me forever? I forgot to tell you. Before I gave you the WA Emperor's Heaven Heart mantra, I used some tricks." Hearing this, Ling Yang's heart trembled. She had asked Fairy Yuan to find the WA Emperor's Heaven Heart mantra. It was also Fairy Yuan who obtained it in the Naga tribe's Temple of Doom. Could it be that from then on, Fairy Yuan had already thought of this day? And then buried a backup plan and foreshadowing? "Fairy Yuan, don't do anything stupid." Jun Xiaoyaro finally spoke. He had been silent before because he did not know how to face Fairy Yuan's feelings. Fairy Yuan must also know that she had indeed left a mark in Jun Xiaoyao's heart. But, it was just a mark. Jun Xiaoyaro was destined not to stay for anyone. Fairy Yuan's love and sacrifice were destined not to receive an equal return. But Fairy Yuan still did so. Perhaps love was something that could make people stupid. "Ling Yang, you and I are supposed to be one. Since that's the case, let's return to our initial state." As Fairy Yuan spoke, her body burned even more fiercely. The 10 princes of Jinwu had no choice but to release him. Fairy Maiden Yuan's delicate body turned to ash inch by inch within the Dao fire of order. Her eyes, however, remained fixed on Jun Xiaoyaro with deep affection. It was as if he wanted to engrave Zhang Xiaoyao's face in his memory forever. Yuan, don't tell me you. Ling Yang seemed to have thought of something, and there was even a trace of fear in her eyes. She knew what Fairy Yuan was going to do. She wanted to abandon her physical body and let her soul return to the sacred body of Empress Wa through the Heavenly Heart Sutra of Empress Wa. In that case, Fairy Yuan herself would disappear. In other words, he would coexist with her in another way. No! You can't do this. Ling Yang's breath was in disarray as she opened her eyes. As the young Empress of Xianting, this was the first time she felt uneasy and fearful. This was also the plan that Fairy Yuan had thought of before. Through this method, she would affect Ling Yang and make her unable to kill Zhang Xiaoyao. Moreover, with Ling Yang's strength and influence, she might be able to help Zhang Xiaoyao in the future. This was also the last thing that Fairy Yuan could do for Zhang Xiaoyao. Yuan, Zhang Xiaoyao's grip was very tight. Fairy Yuan's delicate body turned into ashes in the Dao fire. However, her soul seemed to have turned into a ball of dazzling human-shaped starlight and floated in front of Zhang Xiaoyao. She hugged Zhang Xiaoyao and planted a kiss on his lips. However, Zhang Xiaoyao no longer felt anything. Because even Fairy Yuan's physical body had turned into ashes. Zhang Xiaoyao raised his hand and wanted to touch Fairy Yuan's beautiful face, but he could only touch nothingness. I'm willing to reunite with you for Jiang Shui. Fairy Yuan smiled and murmured in Zhang Xiaoyao's ear. Then, this human-shaped starlight turned into a ball of dazzling light and directly escaped into Ling Yang's primordial spirit. No! Don't! Ling Yang's mind was in intense pain. A pair of jade-like hands covered her temples. Countless memories were extremely chaotic and surged like a tide. And in these memories, they were filled with Zhang Xiaoyao's figure. Zhang Xiaoyao stood in place, stunned. I'm willing to reunite with you for Jiang Shui. Will there be a day when we meet again? Zhang Xiaoyao was silent. The atmosphere of the entire place was also deathly silent. No one would have thought that Fairy Yuan would leave in such a way. No, perhaps not. Many people turned their gazes to Ling Yang. Ling Yang's face was as pale as paper, and her jade-like hands covered her forehead. Ling Yang, are you okay? Gu Tiezi frowned. If something happened to Ling Yang, wouldn't the Seven Emperors' immortal execution array be unable to be activated? I'm fine. Ling Yang breathed deeply, her chest heaving up and down. She didn't expect that Fairy Yuan would hide such a move, and even she didn't notice it. I'm willing to reunite with you for Jiang Shui. Ling Yang's red lips opened slightly, and she subconsciously muttered this sentence. At this moment, she was Ling Yang, but not completely Ling Yang. Because Fairy Yuan's soul had already merged with Ling Yang's soul. One body, two souls, in the end, merged together. On the other side, the 10 princes of Jinwu's face was extremely gloomy. A bargaining chip was gone. However, in the next moment, he felt a chilling killing intent locking onto him. 10 princes of Jinwu, Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes burst with extreme killing intent. He had a cold temperament, and he rarely got angry. But now, Zhang Xiaoyao was angry. He had never wanted to kill someone so much. Die. Zhang Xiaoyao's figure instantly swept in front of the 10 princes of Jinwu, and he grabbed at the 10 princes of Jinwu with one hand. Zhang Xiaoyao, don't be so arrogant, I've also cultivated the postnatal chaotic body. The 10 princes of Jinwu shouted, and the chaotic aura around his body erupted, condensing into a chaotic palm print that crushed toward Zhang Xiaoyao. Die. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao's aura erupted, and the blood of his sacred body boiled and burned. His killing intent surged to the 9 heavens, and it was as if the gods were about to fall. Genesis, light of God. Zhang Xiaoyao seemed to be holding an eternal light that could split the heavens and earth apart, and it was enough to annihilate everything. He didn't want to think about anything now. He just wanted to completely erase the 10 princes of Jinwu from this world. Boom. The eternal light directly pierced through the chaotic palm print, and then, without losing its momentum, it blasted toward the 10 princes of Jinwu. The 10 princes of Jinwu was shocked, and his eyes were filled with fear. He had already transformed into the postnatal chaotic body, but he was still no match for Zhang Xiaoyao. Sun Treasure Wheel. The 10 princes of Jinwu took out his boundary emperor weapon. But the result was still the same. It was accompanied by a deafening roar. The 10 princes of Jinwu's blood spurted wildly, and his physical body was shattered. Even the boundary emperor weapon, the Sun Treasure Wheel, had traces of cracks spreading. This was enough to show the power of Zhun Xiaoyao's move. He was truly enraged. Zhun Xiaoyao, even if I die, I'll drag you down to hell with me. The 10 princes of Jinwu let out a guttural scream, and the chaotic energy in his body suddenly exploded. At the same time, the boundary emperor weapon, the Sun Treasure Wheel, also emitted a dazzling brilliance, and its energy was unstable, and it exploded. The 10 princes of Jinwu had chosen to self-destruct, and he exploded together with the boundary emperor weapon. Boom! A chaotic mushroom cloud rose, and a terrifying chaotic wave rose. Its power was no weaker than that of the battle between Zhun Xiaoyao and the 7 princes. The chaotic mushroom cloud shook the entire world, and the destructive power was raging. A postnatal chaotic body coupled with a boundary emperor weapon's self-destruction was extremely powerful. It could even blow a quasi-supreme martial artist into pieces if caught off guard. However, Zhun Xiaoyao's figure stood tall amidst the chaotic wave, and he was not injured at all. Around him, a few devouring vortexes of the devouring god demonic technique appeared. They were absorbing and refining the 10 princes of Jinwu's Sun Saint power. This Sun Saint power could be combined with Zhun Xiaoyao's Sun Saint power, and it would be of great help to his inner universe's transformation. However, Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes did not have the slightest hint of joy. A sigh left Zhun Xiaoyao's lips. So what if the 10 princes of Jinwu was dead? The girl who danced for him under the starry sky had already disappeared. Chapter 881. They looked at the handsome white-robed man standing in the waves of chaos. The atmosphere was dead silent. Was this Zhun Xiaoyao's charm? Even such an outstanding woman was willing to go through fire and water for him, even sacrificing her life. Some people also thought that, strictly speaking, Fairy Yuan was not completely dead. After all, her soul had merged with Ling Yang's. She was living in a different way. However, there was one thing that shocked and surprised everyone. That was, the explosion of an acquired chaotic body and a quasi-emperor weapon couldn't hurt Zhun Xiaoyao. However, what they didn't know was that the remaining 100 or so Sumeru worlds in Zhun Xiaoyao's body were all shattered by the destructive impact of the chaos. In other words, the 260 Sumeru worlds in Zhun Xiaoyao's body were completely shattered at this moment. It would take some time for them to recover. Of course, this didn't affect Zhun Xiaoyao too much. After all, the 3,000 Sumeru worlds was only one of his many trump cards. Is the son of God of the Zhun family really invincible? Many geniuses had such a thought in their minds. Zhun Xiaoyao was like an undefeatable god of war. Not to mention a fair one-on-one battle. Even if the 7 emperors joined forces, they couldn't suppress Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao's strength was too terrifying. On the side of the foreign realm, even Pu Yarrow, who had the highest cultivation and strongest strength, looked very serious. In the beginning, he didn't put Zhun Xiaoyao on the same level as himself. But now, after a series of battles, Zhun Xiaoyao's terrifying strength made him extremely vigilant. This kind of person is too dangerous. We must nip him in the bud. Pu Yarrow's eyes flashed with bone-deep killing intent. Killing Zhun Xiaoyao was even more important than seizing the Tree of World. Pu Yarrow couldn't imagine what would happen if Zhun Xiaoyao was allowed to grow for a few more years. Even the 7 minor emperors of the foreign realm couldn't do anything to him. There's no other way. Everyone, use that move. Gu Tiezi sighed softly. To be honest, Zhun Xiaoyao's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. Gu Tiezi simply couldn't imagine how he could defeat Zhun Xiaoyao if he didn't have a few tricks up his sleeve. However, Gu Tiezi was still confident. That's the only way. Only by living can one have the chance to become a legend. No one will remember the glory of a dead person. Ji Daoi's eyes were filled with killing intent. When a person dies, everything is gone. As long as Zhun Xiaoyao was dead, his glory would slowly be forgotten by the people. Gu Tiezi activated the Emperor Seal of Dao verification in his body. A terrifying aura as vast as the heavenly Tao surged out from it. Ji Daoyi and the others also began to activate their Tao verification emperor seals. Wisps of magnificent auras burst out, forming some kind of resonance with one another. Under the mask, Xian Yu's face revealed a hint of struggle. However, there was nothing she could do now, because the beings of the other world were still here. They knew Xian Yu's identity. She was a member of the Otherworld organization. Therefore, she had no choice but to make a move. Will I regret it? Xian Yu murmured in her heart. On the other side, Ling Yang was even more conflicted. She already had an ambiguous relationship with Jun Xiaoyao. Now, Fairy Yuan's soul had merged with hers. Although there was no obvious effect for the time being, Ling Yang could clearly feel it. She seemed to have become a little different from herself. Ling Yang, Jiyu Tiezi shouted. Only then did Ling Yang come to her senses. She bit her red lips and activated the Emperor Seal of Tao verification. As the auras of the 7 Emperor Seals of Tao verification erupted, complicated heavenly Tao patterns spread out in the void. It was as if the heavens had carved out a trajectory. As the heavenly Tao patterns spread, an earth-shattering aura that was enough to make the heavens tremble erupted. It formed a huge heavenly Tao array. What is that? At this moment, all the geniuses present felt a tremor from their souls. It was as if they were alone, facing the fear of the heavens. What kind of method is this? Many creatures of the other world were also trembling under this heavenly might. Even someone as strong as Piyu Yarrow could feel the scent of death. He had a premonition that if this formation was directed at him, it would be a disaster. There was no way he could survive. Under everyone's gaze, in the center of the huge heavenly Tao array, immortal light was dense and resplendent. The shadow of an immortal sword with endless murderous aura appeared. The immortal sword shadow was incomparably huge. It was like a heavenly Tao guillotine, carrying a terrifying power that could destroy 10 worlds and slaughter 10,000 immortals. Around it, there were countless immortals bleeding, gods falling, and demonic Buddhas crying out in grief. It was as if any existence would be cut into nothingness in front of this immortal sword. The ultimate trump card bestowed by the heavens to the 7 emperors, the 7 emperors' immortal slaying array, was displayed. That's the immortal slaying sword. Is that your ultimate trump card? Jun Xiaoyao's white robe fluttered under the strong aura and stuck to his slender figure. His eyes also revealed a rare wisp of graveness. He frowned. The immortal slaying sword. The most famous immortal weapon in the 9 heavens immortal realm. Rumors said that the immortal slaying sword was once stained with the blood of a real immortal. The immortal weapon would stir up a great commotion as soon as it appeared. Even the martial monarchs would not be able to sit still. They would try their best to compete for it. That being said, what appeared before them was not the real immortal slaying sword. It was only a wisp of sword intent from the immortal slaying sword. However, even the sword intent was extremely terrifying. Even a pseudo 9 heavens supreme would not survive against it. It could even kill a real 9 heavens supreme. It was the ultimate trump card that the heavens had bestowed upon the 7 emperors. It was no different from cheating. The 7 emperors are strong enough to slay an immortal when teaming up. Jun Xiaoyao, this is the final gift that the heavens have bestowed upon you. Jiyu Tiezi's eyes flickered with a hint of cold disdain. In his opinion, fighting against the heavens was an extremely stupid thing to do. Only by complying with the heavens would one be able to reach the peak of the world. Jun Xiaoyao was obviously digging his own grave by behaving so arrogantly. Following a furious roar, the 7 emperors activated the power of the seal of Tao affirmation at the same time. The illusionary figure of the immortal sword began to gather its power too. Heaven and earth immediately collapsed, and the universe was destroyed. A wisp of sword intent crushed the world. Finally, the Azure Emperor Star could no longer endure the destruction. Even the Tree of World could not suppress the terrifying ripples of destruction. Rumble. A huge explosion took place. The Azure Emperor Star began to tremble, crack, and collapse. In the starry sky outside the Azure Emperor Star, the experts of the immortal realm and the foreign realm who were fighting fiercely sensed a destructive ripple. What's going on? Why would such a ripple appear in the world of the ruins of God? Meng Zhon's mind went blank. The terrifying ripple even made him, a pseudo-9 heaven supreme, feel a sense of despair and death. That kind of power definitely exceeded the pseudo-9 heaven supreme realm. However, in the next moment, a resplendent immortal sword phantom directly cut open the entire Azure Emperor star. The entire huge star was split into two by a wisp of sword intent. At this moment, the universe trembled. Chapter 882. A single strand of sword chi stunned the universe and slashed apart the sky. The entire vast Lotus Emperor star was split into two by the sword energy. It shocked the universe. The heavens trembled. What is that? At this moment, the cultivators from both sides of the celestial realm and the foreign realm all stopped what they were doing. It was because the scene in front of them was too shocking. A sword energy cut the Lotus Emperor star in half. One had to know that there were still some seals left behind by the Lotus Emperor, but they were all cut open. It was terrifying. When the Lotus Emperor star was separated, the world tree was naturally revealed. Furthermore, the situation within was also displayed. The 7 emperors worked together to activate the immortal slaying sword Qi and slash at Jun Xiaoyao. Stupid. When Meng Zhon and the other celestial realm cultivators saw this scene, their pupils constricted, and then they shouted angrily. In such an extreme situation, Jiu Tiezi and the others still chose to fight among themselves and kill Jun Xiaoyao first. If this wasn't stupid, then what was? They didn't care about the big picture at all and were selfish. Rumble. The shadow of the divine sword came down on Jun Xiaoyao in a mighty manner. The surrounding ground collapsed and the void was destroyed. Facing the terrifying sword energy that could sweep through everything, Jun Xiaoyao's expression was solemn, but he was not afraid at all. It was as if there was a blazing sun in his chest. Surging magic power poured into Jun Xiaoyao's supreme bone in his chest. Jun Xiaoyao rarely used the supreme bone. It wasn't because the supreme bone wasn't strong, but because Jun Xiaoyao didn't need to use it at all. Now, facing such an extreme situation, Jun Xiaoyao had to be serious and use all his strength. Blazing light gathered and the hand of heaven condense. Then, the light of reincarnation surged, and a wheel filled with the power of reincarnation appeared. Then, endless red lotus fire surged, and a red lotus filled with the power of sin bloomed in the void. The Supreme Bone's 3 great abilities. Hand of Heaven. Reincarnation Tao Disc. Red Lotus of Sin. The 3 invincible Supreme Bones were unleashed at the same time. That kind of power could destroy the heavens and the earth. Boom. 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 The immortal slaying sword Qi slashed at the Hand of Heaven, the Tao Disc of Reincarnation, and the Red Lotus of Sin. 3 earth-shattering explosions shook the entire star field. Chaotic waves of magic power flooded the heavens and earth. The remaining ripples of the immortal slaying sword Qi were extremely sharp, killing many of the geniuses in the surroundings. What surprised Jun Xiaoyao the most was the fact that he was able to do so. The 3rd level of the Supreme Bone innate ability only managed to weaken the might of the immortal slaying sword Qi. The illusionary figure of the immortal sword sliced through time and space and slashed at him. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand, and the great desolate halberd released 10,000 halberd lights, its might incomparably powerful. Boom. In the end, there was a loud explosion, as if a sun had exploded. Blazing divine radiance surged like a tide and overturned the surroundings. Smoke filled the air. Heaven and earth shook. Turbulence surged in the void that was cut open by the immortal slaying sword Qi. The entire place fell into an eerie silence. Even the battle between the 2 sides had temporarily stopped. Did it work? Jiu Tiezi and the others were a little pale and panting. They had to use a lot of magic power to activate the 7 Emperors' immortal slaying array, so they could not use it too many times. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the center of the smoke. Cough. There was a cough. What? He's not dead yet. Countless people felt their scalps go numb and they gasped. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. In front of the immortal slaying sword Qi that could destroy the heavens and earth and cut through time and space, even a supreme would be killed without any suspense. However, from the sound, it seemed that Jun Xiaoyao was still alive. Under everyone's astonished and shocked gazes, Zhang Xiaoyao's figure appeared. His body was stained with blood, and there was a bloody wound on his chest. Blood dripped down drop by drop. Even the quasi-emperor weapon, the Great Desolation halberd, was starting to crack. The palm of his hand that was holding the Great Desolate halberd cracked and blood flowed down the halberd. He looked like he had only suffered some minor injuries. Not to mention serious injuries, he was not even in a sorry state. If it were not for the fact that the 260 Sumeru worlds in Zhang Xiaoyao's body had been shattered and there was no buffer zone, perhaps Zhang Xiaoyao would not have been injured. How is this possible? Even Prince of the Ancient Prince could not hold back his anger and cried out. This was beyond his expectations. In his expectation, even if Zhang Xiaoyao did not die, he would probably be severely injured and unable to resist. Under such circumstances, it would be very easy to kill Zhang Xiaoyao with his own hands. However, Zhang Xiaoyao did not seem to have any major problems. He still retained his battle strength. How is this possible? Is Zhang Xiaoyao really invincible? Ji Daoi's pupils were trembling. This was the first time he had encountered someone as strange as Zhang Xiaoyao. Among the 7 emperors, Ling Yuan and Xian Yu actually felt a sense of relief in their hearts. As expected of Lord Son of God. Meng Zhon also breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. Is this the killing move that the heavens have bestowed upon me? It is indeed terrifying. It actually injured me. Zhang Xiaoyao raised his hand and looked at the blood on it. This feeling was very strange. Because Zhang Xiaoyao had almost never been injured. Therefore, to him, being injured was a novel thing. However, in the next moment, Zhang Xiaoyao's body shook. There seemed to be the sound of a deity chanting scripture in his body. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the wound on Zhang Xiaoyao's chest began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the technique of the lifebook, the immortal god technique. Hurry up, we can't give him time to recover, Gu Tiezi shouted. At the same time, he turned to look at Pu Yarrow and the others. Zhang Xiaoyao should also be a great threat to your foreign realm. Are you not going to make a move? Gu Tiezi's words made Pu Yarrow's eyes flash. Indeed, Zhang Xiaoyao was too great a threat to the foreign realm. If they didn't get rid of him, who knew how much Zhang Xiaoyao would grow in the future? Attack! Pu Yarrow shouted. All the foreign geniuses also prepared to attack. Tushan Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes flickered. She smiled and said, Young Master Zhang, look, even the people of the immortal realm you protect want to kill you. Why don't you join my Tushan and become my husband? These words made the expressions of Gu Tiezi and the others change. Damn, even the genius of the foreign emperor race couldn't resist Zhang Xiaoyao's charm? This was too ridiculous. If Tushan Xiaoxiao really wanted to help Zhang Xiaoyao, then they would be in a bit of trouble. Apart from this, Pu Yarrow's expression also changed. He understood just how high the standards of Tushan's 5 princesses were. Even if it was Kai Hongyu of the younger generation, Kai Linkong's older brother, they didn't think highly of him at all. Zhang Xiaoyao was able to obtain the favor of one of the princesses. Wouldn't this make all of the foreign young male geniuses, including him, die of jealousy? This was just too much of a failure. All of the foreign male geniuses couldn't compare to an immortal realm male. No need to waste words. If you want to attack, then attack together. Zhang Xiaoyao held the cracked Great Desolate halberd, completely ignoring Tushan Xiaoxiao. Tushan Xiaoxiao's schemes really were deep. She wanted Zhang Xiaoyao to be her husband in front of everyone. Even if Zhang Xiaoyao didn't immediately agree, as long as there was a trace of hesitation, it would provoke criticism. They would think that Zhang Xiaoyao harbored a trace of disloyalty. Tushan Xiaoxiao's actions were undoubtedly to implicate Zhang Xiaoyao and her, or even the entire Tushan. Therefore, Zhang Xiaoyao didn't hesitate at all, immediately rejecting her. Sigh, what a pity, good fortune is hard to find. Tushan Xiaoxiao sighed softly. She really liked Zhang Xiaoyao. This was simply an almost perfect man. Not only her, but her other 4 sisters would also like him. Kill. At this moment, the immortal realm's 7 emperors, as well as the foreign realm's Pu Yarrow, Nine-Eyed Evil Dragon, Huang Naitian, and the others, all attacked together. As for Jun Lingsang, Lord Grim, Yu Chanhuan, and the other geniuses who stood on Jun Xiaoyao's side, they were blocked by Kang Li, Yarou Qing, Xing Lu, and the other descendants of the Xian Ting. Haha, what ability does this Jun have to make the geniuses of Immortal Realm, Foreign Realm, and Two Realms attack me together? Jun Xiaoyao laughed freely, the great desolate halberd pointing diagonally towards the heavens, his black hair fluttering about, unbridled and unruly. One person, facing the joint forces of Two Realms geniuses. Who else was there? Chapter 883. Immortal Domains geniuses, foreign geniuses, they were originally mortal enemies. Yet now, because of Jun Xiaoyao, they joined forces. It could be seen that Jun Xiaoyao was already an existence that suppressed the entire era. Regardless of whether it was Immortal Domain or the Foreign Realm, none of them wanted to see this great era's glory be seized by Jun Xiaoyao alone. Therefore, they wanted to see a legend fall. To be able to make so many of us surround and kill you, Jun Xiaoyao, you should be able to die in peace. Pu Yaro's expression was cold as frost. Come, let this son of God see what the so-called Two Realms geniuses are capable of. Jun Xiaoyao's words were unbridled, free, and easy. Today, Jun Xiaoyao was going to be arrogant for once. Again, Jiu Tiezi let out a long roar, Fushi sacred body activated to the extreme, surging magical power landing in the Seven Emperors' immortal slaughtering formation. Ji Daoyi and the others also attacked with all their strength. Ling Yang and Xian Yu secretly gritted their teeth, but they could only attack. In an instant, immortal light shone resplendently. The Seven Emperors' immortal slaughtering formation was activated to the extreme. Just a wisp of aura alone was enough to crush the void. Immortal slaughtering sword energy filled the universe's starry sky, destroying all directions. Just the aftermath of the aura was enough to make a pseudo-supreme being tremble. The Seven Emperors' immortal slaughtering formation was activated to the extreme by the Seven Emperors, its power even stronger than the previous sword. At the same time, on the Foreign Realms side, over 100 Heavens geniuses also displayed extreme moves at the same time. Great Wasteland Palm Imprint, Demonic Might 10 Directions, Extreme Baleful Palm, countless powerful extreme moves and great divine abilities were displayed at the same time. The Nine-Eyed Evil Dragon, Huang Netian, Pu Yaro, and the others also displayed extreme moves. Over 100 top-level Heavens geniuses displayed their strongest moves at the same time. Magical power gathered into a world-destroying torrent. Even if it was a true supreme being, they would be drowned in this destructive wave of magical power, completely falling. On one side was the immortal slaughtering sword energy that could cut the heavens and destroy the earth, exterminating immortals and God. On the other side were over 100 top-level Heavens geniuses, displaying a magical power tide. The two heavenly legends of the two worlds attacked Jun Xiaoyao at the same time. That fluctuation was simply indescribable with words. The Azure Emperor Star had been reduced to ashes. Apart from the World Tree, nothing would be left. In the face of such a destructive ultimate move, Jun Xiaoyao's expression was cold and contemptuous. He was like an immortal god that stood above all the epochs, looking down on mortals who dared to challenge him. Jun Xiaoyao's great desolate halberd was suspended in front of him. He raised his left hand and held tightly onto a wisp of eternal light that had been created from the chaos. Genesis, light of God. He raised his right hand, and endless sinful karma threads wrapped around him. Genesis, God's punishment. Jun Xiaoyao then activated the power of his inner universe. The power of the universe's origin surged out and supported these two ultimate moves. Under the shocked gazes of the world, Jun Xiaoyao slowly clasped his hands. Light of the three realms, I bestow life. With a single thought, darkness befalls the entire world. The power of the great Tao of origin, the fusion move of Genesis, was displayed. An indescribable torrent of destruction spread out from Jun Xiaoyao's palm. He was like a god that controlled destruction and regeneration. His feet stepped on the 6 directions, and his hands covered the 8 desolate. With a single thought, he could destroy the universe. With a single thought, he could reshape the world. Jun Xiaoyao was the only one between heaven and earth. The three ultimate moves collided. Heaven and earth fell into a strange silence. It was as if all things in the world were going to return to the void in that kind of extreme collision. At this moment, even Meng Zhon and the other Grand Knights, as well as the quasi-supreme beings of the foreign realm, revealed extreme shock. In the entire starry sky, the Immortal Realms team and the foreign army all retreated quickly, their faces carrying unprecedented shock. In the center of the collision, chaos was born, and the void silently turned into true nothingness. After a few breaths, it also seemed like countless years had passed. Boom! A shocking explosion that sounded like the creation of the heavens and the earth exploded. The wave of destruction destroyed the void. This was definitely an epic collision of the younger generation. Poochie. On the foreign realm side, hundreds of heaven's prides directly collapsed in this collision, exploding into clouds of bloody mist. Even creatures as powerful as the quasi-emperor race's heaven's prides, such as Huang Zhentian and the nine-eyed evil dragon, were directly annihilated, falling without any suspense. Among all the heaven's prides, only Piyu Yarou and Tushan Xiaoxiao survived. It was because they activated their life-saving treasures. Those were life-saving treasures bestowed upon them by the emperor race behind them. However, even so, the two of them were still in an extremely sorry state. Tushan Xiaoxiao spat out a large mouthful of blood, her flesh split open, her beautiful eyes widened, even carrying a hint of fear. As for Piyu Yarou, he was even more stunned, his body cracking, seriously injured, his face carrying unprecedented fear. The dignified foreign realm's younger generation, one of the 10 heavenly kings, Piyu Yarou, was terrified. Monster! Piyu Yarou's voice trembled, his Dao heart trembling. This time, it left a heavy shadow in his heart. Meanwhile, on the other side, the 7 emperors all spat out large mouthfuls of blood, instantly suffering serious injuries. They all suffered great injuries, their flesh collapsing, their primordial spirits almost turning into nothingness. If not for the 7 of them sharing the damage through the 7 emperors' immortal slaughtering formation, these 7 people would most likely not be able to survive. Such an outcome caused everyone present to be stunned. The entire starry sky was deathly silent to the point of being a bit strange. Only the sounds of countless exclamations and gulping of saliva sounded. The heavens prides of heaven from the other side were almost completely wiped out, only the heavenly prides of heaven from the emperor race, Piyu Yarou and Tushan Xiaoxiao were left. On the immortal domain side, the 7 emperors were all seriously injured, suffering great injuries. This battle accomplishment was simply ferocious, unparalleled. Since ancient times, no one had been able to create such a record. Even the young great emperors, the young ancient emperors, could not possibly have such terrifying battle accomplishment. Everyone's minds were rumbling. This scene completely overturned everyone's imaginations. Their scalps were about to explode, goosebumps rising all over their bodies. Everyone's eyes once again landed on Jun Xiaoyaro, who was at the center of the collision. Cracking sounds rang out. That was the quasi-emperor weapon Great Desolate Halberd, shattering inch by inch, turning into fragment. Even a quasi-emperor weapon could not withstand this destructive fluctuation. One could see just how powerful this collision was. Jun Xiaoyao's white clothes were stained with some blood. There was also a trace of blood flowing down from the corner of his lips. However, the current Jun Xiaoyao not only did not give off the feeling of being in a sorry state. Instead, he gave off a lonely feeling like a hero at the end of his road. It was as if the entire world was Jun Xiaoyao's enemy. Son of God, seeing this scene, Meng Zhon and the others clenched their teeth tightly. Resisting 2 worlds with the strength of a single person, how lonely was this? This involuntarily made Meng Zhon think of Jun Xiaoyao's father, the white-clothed divine King Jun Wuhui. He was also dressed in white, similarly facing an endless army alone. One man holding the pass, 10,000 unable to pass. This was how a real man should be. He still won't die. Piyu Yarou and the others were in despair. It was like the helplessness and despair of mortals facing gods. The faces of Ji Daoyi and the others were even more distorted. They had all suffered such serious injuries, their combat strength greatly reduced, paying a huge price. In the end, they were still unable to kill Jun Xiaoyao. This was too despairing. Jun Xiaoyaro was simply an undefeatable super boss. Just as the atmosphere was in a stalemate, Gu Tieze's figure flashed, and he directly charged toward Jun Xiaoyaro. This. Gu Tieze wants to die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be astonished. Then, they all cried out in alarm. Even the prodigies of two worlds attacking together were no match for Jun Xiaoyaro. What use was Gu Tieze alone? Gu Tieze, although I'm injured, I'm not someone you can challenge alone. Jun Xiaoyaro casually wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand. Is that so? Gu Tieze's palm struck toward Jun Xiaoyaro, and Jun Xiaoyaro also punched out. Bang! Gu Tieze's arm directly exploded. Half of his body had been smashed into pieces. This scene was not out of everyone's expectations. However, in the next moment, Gu Tieze's lips curled into a strange smile. His lips whispered, as if he was chanting something. Then, the void behind him was suddenly torn apart. A figure with an incomparably terrifying aura flashed out. A palm strike landed on Jun Xiaoyao's body. But no one would be able to react in time to this sudden turn of events. Gu Tieze paid the price of being seriously injured in order to plot against Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro grunted. Even the sacred body of the ancients could not withstand that terrifying power, and cracks spread out. A hint of extreme coldness appeared in his eyes. This is a divine obsession. Chapter 884. Behind Gu Tieze, the void split open. Raging karmic fire surged out, and a magnificent red lotus bloomed. On the red lotus stood a blurry figure that suppressed the heavens. It was incomparably terrifying. It was one of the 7 sins obsessions, the red karmic fire lotus that represented the sin of wrath. That's the 7 sins obsessions. How is that possible? How can Gu Tieze control the lotus theater's divine obsessions? In all directions, countless people's minds were blank, and they were somewhat dumbfounded. That was the myth theater's divine obsessions. Although it was only one of the 7 sins, it was terrifying enough. In the world of the divine ruins, it was almost an invincible existence. And Jun Xiaoyaro had withstood the attack of the divine obsessions with his physical body. This shocked everyone even more. Gu Tieze, you're really scheming. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. He guessed that Gu Tieze might have some tricks up his sleeve. Because what Gu Tieze wanted to do was to kill him personally and then obtain the heavenly Dao Crown's reward. To be honest, Jun Xiaoyaro did not expect Gu Tieze to think of such a method. He's not dead yet. Gu Tieze was stunned. In his expectations, the divine obsessions should be able to kill Jun Xiaoyaro with one move. At the very least, it would be able to severely injure Jun Xiaoyaro. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro had only lost a little blood. How monstrous was his physical body? Again, Gu Tieze's eyes were cold. He had already gone all out this time. He could only win, not lose. Gu Tieze chanted the mantra again. The red karmic fire lotus that represented the sin of wrath reached out a hand and suppressed Jun Xiaoyaro. The space in front of him shattered, and everything was burned into nothingness in the raging karmic fire. It could be said that in the world of the divine ruins, the 7 sins' divine obsessions were the strongest existences. Boom! Jun Xiaoyaro was in the middle of the burning karmic fire. Even magic immunity was not immune to this terrifying power. Jun Xiaoyao's sparkling and translucent body also began to turn slightly charred. Starting from the fingers, little by little, they turned into flying ash. It's finally coming to an end. Jun Xiaoyaro, your legend will come to an end today. The world will only remember the winners. The losers have no right to be remembered. Gu Tieze smiled. He had planned, plotted, and endured for so long. Wasn't it all for this moment? Back then, Jun Xiaoyaro had stolen Fairy Yuan's bride at the wedding banquet. Gu Tieze, the successor of Fuxi immortal lineage, was secretly mocked and ridiculed by countless people. Gu Tieze tolerated it. He had been waiting for this moment, for Jun Xiaoyaro to fall. Gu Tieze could hardly suppress the excitement in his heart. Every single one of his nerves was trembling. Ling Yang and Xian Yu's hearts were trembling slightly. For some reason, they felt a heart-wrenching pain. Especially Ling Yang, Her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. It's finally coming to an end. Pu Yarrow took a deep breath. To be honest, he was really scared by Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was too difficult to kill. If such a monster who could not be judged by common sense grew up, it would definitely be a catastrophe for the foreign world. The atmosphere was dead silent. A breath was like a year. Everyone looked at Jun Xiaoyaro, who was floating in the karmic fire. They didn't think that Jun Xiaoyaro could make a comeback. After all, the divine obsessions were too powerful. In the world of the divine ruins, they were almost invincible. No matter how strong Jun Xiaoyaro was, it was impossible for him to fight the divine obsessions of the god of war. Everyone else aside, even Jun Xiaoyaro himself felt a faint sense of death looming over him. The last time he felt this way was when Jun Xiaoyaro was in the Bronze Immortal Palace, floating in the myriad qi. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed, and he prepared to take out the myriad qi cauldron and enter it to isolate the power of the karmic fire. However, at this moment, in Jun Xiaoyao's spring of life in the inner universe, the silent and ancient lotus seed began to tremble violently. It was as if something was about to be born. More and more cracks began to spread on the surface of the lotus seed. As the cracks spread, traces of chaotic energy appeared. It carried the power of origin. This power spread to Jun Xiaoyao's entire body. The power of the karmic fire could no longer hurt Jun Xiaoyao. The blurry figure standing on the red lotus suddenly looked at Jun Xiaoyao like a sword. At the same time, the 5 divine obsessions in the starry sky also turned their gazes to Jun Xiaoyao. Boom! The 6 divine obsessions seemed to have been stimulated and began to release their auras. That feeling was like a lion or tiger that had encountered a greater threat and let out a roar. What's going on? Everyone was at a loss. Jiyu Tiezi felt an inexplicable uneasiness. He had felt this uneasiness before. No, impossible. Jun Xiaoyao can't have any other trump cards. Jiyu Tiezi stared at Jun Xiaoyao. At this moment, in the distant starry sky, a boundless and terrifying aura of destruction erupted. This aura caused Meng Zhon and the other Grand Knights to turn pale. Not good, it's the last divine obsession. Meng Zhon roared. In the distant sky, the tide of destruction surged. A black lotus filled with the power of destruction floated over, and a blurry figure stood on it. It was the black lotus of destruction that represented one of the 7 sins, the sin of gluttony. With the arrival of the last divine obsession, the 7 sins divine obsessions finally completely gathered in one place. The indigo feather lotus that represented greed, the pink lotus that represented lust, the serene water lotus that represented jealousy, the red lotus that represented anger, the pure white lotus that represented sloth, the great sun golden lotus that represented arrogance, the black lotus that represented gluttony. The 7 sin lotuses gathered in one place, approaching each other and beginning to merge. No, we have to stop it. A Grand Knight from the immortal realm roared and charged at the 7 fused divine obsessions. However, before the Grand Knight could even approach the 7 sins divine obsessions, he was directly shattered by a wisp of aura. A Grand Knight at the quasi-supreme level couldn't even withstand a wisp of aura. It's over. Meng Zhon's eyes lost all light. Not only him, all of the border soldiers and immortal domain cultivators' heavenly talents. All of their faces were ashen. On the other hand, the foreign side breathed a sigh of relief, but their expressions weren't too good. It was because Jun Xiaoyao alone slaughtered over 100 top heavenly talents on the foreign side. This loss was too great. But at least, the ruins of God was about to be broken. This was the only good news for the foreign side. Rumble. In the void, countless bolts of lightning gathered, and a destructive will was brewing. No one could stop the 7 sins from merging. Jun Xiaoyao raised his head and looked at the merged 7 sins divine obsessions. There was an indescribable look in his eyes. In just a short moment, the 7 sins divine obsessions merged together, and a dazzling divine splendor surged. In the next moment, a terrifying aura that could suppress 10,000 worlds poured out. An incomparably blurry and imposing demonic figure walked out from the endless divine splendor. It was like the most terrifying demon king of destruction, coming from the ancient era of myths and legends, crushing everything in the present world. The evil will of the gods finally appeared in the world. Chapter 885. The aura of destruction surged in all directions. The entire Divine Ruins world began to shake at this moment. Enormous cracks spread out millions of li in the void. That was the entire Divine Ruins world, unable to withstand the terrifying power of the god evil will, starting to gradually disintegrate. This god evil will seemed to have walked out from ancient mythological history. That terrifying pressure was simply about to make one collapse. A great emperor's divine obsession was enough to cause a boundless calamity, a blood river for millions of li. Let alone the god evil will that was transformed from a myth emperor. That power could simply annihilate the heavens. Perhaps even if a true great emperor took action, they might not necessarily be able to block it. In the starry sky, everyone felt their hair stand on end. Even the creatures on the other side also felt a wave of horror. Emperor Shenhui's evil thoughts were too terrifying, causing them to feel a chill down their spines. As for Immortal Domain's side, the cultivators' faces were even more ashen. This kind of pressure simply made one feel even more despair than facing a great emperor. It's over, everything is over. Meng Zhon's pupils were lax, as if they lost focus. They came to the Divine Ruins world precisely to prevent the Seven Sins god evil will from breaking the seal and merging. In the end, they still couldn't stop it. The entire Divine Ruins world would be destroyed under this god evil will. This border gap would be difficult to block again. This way, the foreign great army would be able to directly invade. At this moment, all of the Immortal Domain cultivators' faces were deathly pale, their bodies like black wood, their hearts like dead ashes. Their hearts felt as if they were fiercely hammered, and then began to beat in despair. That was the despair of facing death. This god evil will was simply like a great emperor reviving, a devil god descending into the world, wishing to destroy this world. Even Jiu Tiez's expression changed greatly, discovering that he seemed to have gone too far. The situation was completely out of control. There would be a tremendous impact. Once the Divine Ruins world was destroyed, the foreign army would immediately march straight in. At that time, it would be a true great war between two worlds, a calamity of the heavens. This kind of influence was too far-reaching, simply able to change the situation of this era. The true chaotic great world might arrive ahead of time. At this moment, Zhun Xiaoyao's brows were tightly locked. Compared to this god evil will, the seven emperors were nothing at all. What was certain? Right now, no one could stop the evil thoughts of this god. Even if a true great emperor appeared on the spot, he might not be able to suppress the evil thoughts of this god. Above the starry sky, the figure of the evil spirit of the god was extremely blurry, and the great paths around it collapsed. All sorts of deities and Buddhas were wailing, the heavens were collapsing, and the horrifying scene of all living beings being bathed in blood was revealed. The evil thoughts of gods were the undying obsessions of experts above the great emperor level. He was holy in life and evil in death. It was because the Qing emperor cared for the common people and was selfless. Only then would the evil thoughts of the gods become more and more terrifying, possessing boundless evil thoughts and demonic nature. Rumble. The evil spirit of the god stretched out a large hand and grabbed at the world tree. The world tree was incomparably huge, with chaotic energy flowing around it. The crown of the tree began to tremble. All kinds of chaos laws surged out, and the power of the world surged. Obviously, the world tree also had some kind of instinct and did not want the evil thoughts of the gods to get it. The evil thought let out a cold snort. Suddenly, it was as if the ground had been struck by lightning, and the heavens were about to explode. Every living being at the scene was knocked backward. The blood in their chests churned as they spat out mouthfuls of blood. His eyes were filled with extreme shock. With a casual snort, all living beings were injured. How terrifying was this? The evil god's giant hand grabbed at the world tree and pulled it up. The chaos laws shook, and heaven and earth collapsed. This world seemed to be returning to the chaos and nothingness. From this, it could be seen what kind of supreme power the world tree possessed. However, the world tree was now an ownerless object after all. It was still impossible for it to resist the evil thought of the gods. Huge cracks began to appear in the universe. One could even vaguely see the scene of the celestial realm on the other side of the border. At this moment, at the border, outside the world of the ruins of God, Fourth Master Scar and the other elders of the border station were standing in the void. Their faces were ugly to the extreme. In the end, is there still no way? The Fourth Master Scar sighed deeply, his brows tightly knitted. The giant green lotus, which was also the world of the ruins of God, was already covered in cracks. From the cracks, one could clearly see that the incomparably terrifying evil thought of the gods was about to break through the world of the ruins of God. At that time, forget about the invasion of the foreign army. Just the evil thought of this god alone could cause a boundless catastrophe. It's all over, an elder at the border said with a blank face. We need to inform the immortal factions of the Nine Heavens immortal realm that a great war is about to break out. We also need to restrain the evil thought of this god. Otherwise, the people will be in great danger. Many of the remaining elders had anxious looks on their faces. Sigh, it's not that easy. We need more than one martial monarch to restrain the evil thought of this god. Due to the ancient covenant of alliance, there are only a few martial monarchs in the celestial realm. How are we going to find a few martial monarchs in such a short time? The Fourth Master Scar shook his head. Meanwhile, deep in the starry sky, a few blurry figures with the power of the world and the aura of the great Tao appeared. They were the half-monarch realm experts who were stationed at the border all year round. The situation isn't looking good, a half-monarch murmured. If the evil thought of the god breaks through the seal, we won't be able to suppress it even if we work together. Is there going to be a miracle? While the experts at the border were extremely worried. Inside the world of the ruins of God, the world was shaking. The heavens began to crumble and fall like tiles and bricks. Obviously, the evil thought of the god wanted to break through the world of the ruins of God and head to the outside world. On the other side, many creatures had excitement in their eyes. Their goal had been achieved. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro frowned. Suddenly, in his inner universe, the ancient lotus seed that was immersed in the spring of life seemed to have sensed the danger of the evil thought of the god. More and more cracks appeared on the surface. In the end, it directly split open, and countless chaotic laws spread out. This, Jun Xiaoyaro sensed it with his divine sense, and he was also surprised. Previously, Jun Xiaoyaro had fought with the 10 princes of Jinwu. But even the 10 princes of Jinwu, who had transformed into the postnatal chaotic body, the chaotic power that he controlled was far inferior to the chaotic power that was seeping out now. This chaotic power was incomparably pure, as if it was seeping out from the primordial chaos. As the ancient lotus seed split open, a green lotus blossomed. This green lotus had a total of 36 lotus leaves, and it was surrounded by chaotic energy. There was even a complete law of chaos that appeared. Jun Xiaoyaro was really surprised and in disbelief. If Jun Xiaoyaro guessed correctly, this should be the 36th grade Chaos Green Lotus. In comparison, the 7 god obsessions from before could only be considered 12th grade. They were on a completely different level. Green light surged, and chaotic energy surge. Above the 36th grade Chaos Green Lotus, a green-robed phantom slowly appeared. Transcendent. Supreme. It was as if he had walked out of a myth. It was Emperor Qing. Chapter 886. In Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe, chaotic energy surged and light surged. Above the 36th grade chaotic green lotus, a blurry figure was shrouded in dazzling divine splendor. He was dressed in green, simple and unadorned, but with a supreme aura. His hair fluttered gently, as if he was an immortal. Although his face was blurry and shrouded in divine splendor. But a corner of his face could be vaguely seen, and it was stunning. That kind of flawless beauty had already transcended the identity of a man and a woman. It was as if that was synonymous with perfection itself. The lotus Theacha's original form was a green lotus in the chaos, and there was no gender distinction. At this moment, in the inner universe, Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit condensed and appeared, standing in front of the lotus Theacha's phantom. He stared at the peerless figure in front of him. Was it really the lotus Theach? Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. If it were anyone else, if they saw the lotus the arch, even if it was just a wisp of his soul or a phantom, they would be extremely excited and unable to control themselves. After all, this was the supreme mythical emperor recorded in ancient history. It was a mythical existence. But Jun Xiaoyao's expression was very calm, and his white robe was peerless. Facing the lotus theater's phantom, he didn't lose in terms of transcendence at all. It was as if the most stunning figures of ancient and modern times had met face to face across time and space. This world has its own rules, the lotus theater's phantom finally spoke. His voice was clear, and one couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. It was different from the expected pressure of a mythical emperor. At this moment, the lotus theater's phantom was very calm and didn't give off any pressure. It even gave people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. Jun Xiaoyao even felt that just standing beside the lotus the arch was like being enlightened, and he could directly touch the great Tao of chaos of heaven and earth. It could be said that even if it was just a mortal body, as long as one stayed by the lotus theater's side for a long time, they would be baptized by the great Tao of heaven and earth and transform into a peerless genius with a limitless future. I am Jun Xiaoyaro from the Jun family. Greetings, senior. Jun Xiaoyaro cupped his hand slightly, and his tone was neither servile nor overbearing. It was very calm. Descendant of the Jun family? Back then, I had a discussion with the Primeval ancient emperor of the Jun family. I wonder if he is still around. Primeval ancient emperor? Jun Xiaoyaro was stunned. Primeval ancient emperor, Jun Xiaoyaro. To be honest, Jun Xiaoyaro had never heard of this name. However, to be able to discuss the Tao with the Azure the Arch, his cultivation level should not be too low. It seems that our family's waters are also very deep. Jun Xiaoyaro was somewhat speechless. Even the dignified son of God of the Jun family couldn't figure out how deep the Jun family's waters were. He had no idea how many experts the Jun family was hiding. This world was created by you. That's right, Jun Xiaoyaro replied. All of a sudden, he felt a gaze that seemed to be able to see through the ages fall on him. In front of this light, all secrets were no longer secrets. Strange, you seem to be a void, an anomaly that has jumped out of the world. No wonder you were able to create this world. There was a hint of surprise in the Azure Emperor's voice. It could be seen that Jun Xiaoyaro had also surprised the Azure Emperor. Jun Xiaoyaro was quite calm about it. He knew he was a traveler, so he would not be affected by the karma of this world, nor would he fall into the 6 paths of reincarnation. Perhaps you do have a glimmer of hope. The Azure Emperor said as if he had thought of something. Senior, the evil intent of the gods is about to break the seal, and the ruins of God will be destroyed. It will be a calamity for the 9 heavens immortal realm. Jun Xiaoyaro brought his fists together at the Azure Emperor and said in a serious tone. They did not have much time to chat. Do you know why I was born with the evil intent of the gods? The Azure Emperor asked. I don't know, Jun Xiaoyaro replied after a slight hesitation. It was true that not all martial monarchs would be born with the evil intent of the gods after they died. Only martial monarchs with extreme obsessions would be born with the evil intent. However, what kind of obsessions did the Azure Emperor have? I have an obsession that I won't rest until I die, the Azure Emperor said. May I ask what your obsession is? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. It would reveal the secret of why the Azure Emperor was born with the evil intent of the gods. I want to build a world of immortals, and the ruins of God is my experiment, the Azure Emperor said. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes widened upon hearing the words. Building a world of immortals. How bold was that? I want a world of immortals where everyone can become an immortal and live forever in peace, the Azure Emperor said. Jun Xiaoyaro was quite surprised. The Azure Emperor was being too ambitious. Even Jun Xiaoyaro did not think too much about it. He only wanted to achieve immortality. At most, he wanted to lead the entire Jun clan to become an immortal. As for the entire 9 heavens immortal realm, everyone could become an immortal. Jun Xiaoyaro did not have the kind of compassion and magnanimity. However, I failed, and the ruins of God was the result of my failure. Therefore, I was unwilling to give up. My obsession was not extinguished, and it formed the evil intent of the gods. However, I knew it would become a threat in the future, so I divided it into 7 parts and suppressed them separately, but I still couldn't escape today. The Azure Emperor sighed. Jun Xiaoyaro was also silent. The Azure Emperor's starting point was not wrong. He was merciful and wanted everyone to be like a dragon. However, this was not something that the Azure Emperor could do alone. Even the mythical emperors, whose power was almost on par with the heavens, could not reach this level. Even a real immortal might not be able to do it. However, with this cause, the evil intent of the gods was born. In the unseen world, everything had its own destiny. Senior Azure Emperor, is there no way to stop the evil intent of the gods? Jun Xiaoyaro was still unwilling to give up. He didn't want to lose this bet. The Azure Emperor's gaze fell on Jun Xiaoyaro. After a while, he sighed faintly. Originally, there was no hope. However, the appearance of an anomaly like you may change everything. Senior, please tell me. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were clear. I can use a special method to seal the evil intent of the gods in your inner universe. However, if your inner universe can't withstand it, it will be destroyed directly, and you will also die. Can you bear this risk and price? The Azure Emperor looked at Jun Xiaoyao. For anyone, this was definitely a dilemma. After all, it was a matter of life and death. If the evil intent of the gods broke through the world of the ruins of God, Jun Xiaoyao might not necessarily die. However, if the evil intent of the gods was sealed in Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe, he would definitely die if he was not careful. Senior, please make a move. I can bear it. Jun Xiaoyao smiled slightly. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Without risks, there would be no gains. To a certain extent, Jun Xiaoyao was also a gambler. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used such a risky method from the beginning. Okay. The Azure Emperor nodded slightly. At the same time, in the outside world, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were clear as he looked at the evil intent of the gods in the starry sky. At this moment, countless cracks had already spread across the entire world of the ruins of God. All the cultivators of the immortal region were in complete despair. The hope in their eyes was extinguished. The evil intent of the gods was about to break through the seal. Who can save our immortal region? A border soldier looked up at the sky with tears in his eyes. At this moment, green light surged in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes, and a chaotic aura suddenly surged around his body. All kinds of chaotic laws surged out. Boom! In an instant, a vast pressure swept across the entire world of the ruins of God. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they fell on Jun Xiaoyao. Chapter 887. The law of primal chaos spread around Jun Xiaoyao's body. The turbulent primal chaos energy wrapped around him. His aura was rising steadily as well, and it was rising violently and explosively at a speed that caused everyone to feel terrified. What's going on? What's wrong with the Jun family's son of God? Everyone was extremely shocked, their mouths wide open, so wide that an egg could be stuffed in. The aura Jun Xiaoyao was emitting at this moment was too terrifying. It was like a god of primal chaos had awakened. That aura crushed the heavens and made the world tremble. This is impossible. Gu Tiezi was the first to shout. He completely lost his composure, and his face was about to distort. Could it be that the originally certain victory was going to be reversed? What other methods did Jun Xiaoyao have? Was he really a god? Why couldn't any method take down Jun Xiaoyao? At this moment, Gu Tiezi's mentality was really a bit broken. The terrifying aura emanating from Jun Xiaoyao had completely exceeded his own level of cultivation. It was simply like the resurrection of an indestructible god in ancient history. No, it's strange. That's not his own strength. On the other side, there were quasi-supreme beings whispering in surprise. They absolutely did not believe that a young generation of the immortal domain could become so strong in such a short period of time. It was about the same as the aura emitted by the evil spirit of the god. Above the starry sky, the evil spirit of the god noticed Jun Xiaoyao. A pair of eyes that seemed to hide a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood stared coldly. Then, The evil spirit of the god reached out a large hand that covered the sky. Suddenly, the entire starry sky seemed to have fallen into endless darkness, and all kinds of dark chaos laws surge. It was as if this world was going to be pulled into the end of eternal darkness. Xiao Yao, young master, Lord Grim, Jun Lingsang, Yu Chanhuan, and the others couldn't help but shout when they saw this. They wanted to, but they were powerless. In a battle of this level, even a quasi-supreme being would directly explode if they intervened. They wouldn't even have the chance to make a move. Outside the ruins of God, Fourth Master Scar and the others, who were observing the scene inside the ruins of God through the crack, were also shocked. Not good. The Son of God is in danger. Fourth Master Scar was extremely anxious. He couldn't imagine how the Jun family would react if Jun Xiaoyaro were to fall. If the Jun clan gave up on the Nine Heavens immortal realm and sealed themselves off because of Jun Xiaoyao's death, the situation of the Nine Heavens immortal realm would only worsen. The Nine Heavens immortal realm could not afford to lose the Jun clan. This is bad. Even the supreme quasi-emperors in the depths of the starry sky frowned. If Jun Xiaoyaro fell, the impact would be too far-reaching. It would affect the future of the great world. However, in the next moment, the expressions of these quasi-emperors guarding the border froze, also stunned. They were not the only ones who were stunned. The Fourth Master Scar and the other veterans at the border were also stunned. There was also the ruins of God World. Meng Zhon and the other great knights, Jiyu Tiezi and the other 7 martial emperors, Lord Grim and the others. The pseudo-Nine Heavens Supremes of the foreign realms, Piyu Yaro, Tushan Xiaoxiao, and the others. They were all stunned. What did they just see? A boundless chaotic glow appeared behind Jun Xiaoyao. A peerless and magnificent figure slowly appeared behind Jun Xiaoyao. Sigh, a soft sigh was heard. It was as light as a feather, yet it felt like it was crushing everything. Bang! Billions of chaotic rules appeared and turned into chaotic chains lunging at the evil spirit. Roar! The evil spirit let out a furious roar like a wild beast. An even more terrifying aura burst out, causing the heavens to crumble and the stars to fall. The chains of chaos wrapped around the evil spirit of the god, binding it tightly before pulling it toward Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. This could be said to be the biggest and most dangerous gamble he had ever taken since he started cultivating. Come on, I, Jun Xiaoyao, am not afraid of anything. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. There was no such word as fear in his dictionary. He was indifferent to life and death. If he was not convinced, he would fight. Rumble. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, that extremely terrifying evil spirit of the god seeped right into Jun Xiaoyao's body. In an instant, the boundless and terrifying power shook Jun Xiaoyao's body, causing countless bloody wound. Blood dripped down. One had to know that Jun Xiaoyao's physical body had the potential to become a great emperor. However, because of this impact, his body began to crack and stain with blood. It could be seen how dangerous it was to seal the evil spirit of a god. It was like dancing on the tip of a knife. Of course, the world tree was also pulled into Jun Xiaoyao's body along with the evil spirit of a god. The world tree and the evil spirit of a god entered Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe together. At this moment, everyone in the starry sky was dumbfounded. The Fourth Master Scar and other elders outside the world of the ruins of God were also dumbfounded. They had never expected the situation to develop like this. That phantom is Lord Qing Di. On the side of the immortal realm, countless people's eyes fell on the transcendent phantom behind Jun Xiaoyao. Who else could that peerless supreme figure be other than the Qing Di? However, in the next moment, the phantom of the Qing Di disappeared. Because the Qing Di needed to use all his strength to suppress the evil spirit of this god. If the real Emperor Qing had appeared, the evil thoughts of this god would have been easily suppressed. However, the problem was that the current Qing Di was just a phantom, a wisp of remnant soul hidden in the 36th grade chaotic green lotus. To be able to seal the evil spirit of a god was already doing his best. What the hell is going on? Lord Son of God used his own body to seal the obsession of a god. How is this possible? Could it be that there is an inner universe or small world in Son of God's body, But he is only at the Sacred Lord realm? Countless people in all directions were shocked speechless. Zhang Xiaoyao's performance was undoubtedly unimaginable and unbelievable. Of course, the cultivators of the immortal realm were even more moved. What kind of self-sacrificing spirit did he have? The Son of God is indeed the same as Lord Wu Hui. He is completely devoted to the immortal realm. For a man like Meng Zhon, even his eyes were slightly red. One could imagine how moved the people of the immortal realm were by Zhang Xiaoyao's self-sacrifice. At this moment, in Zhang Xiaoyao's inner universe, the phantom of the Qing Di was using all his strength to suppress the evil spirit of a god, trying to seal it in the deepest part of Zhang Xiaoyao's inner universe. Of course, this was extremely harmful to Zhang Xiaoyao. This was because although Zhang Xiaoyao's inner universe was his own great Tao, it was still in the growth stage after all. Its diameter was only 2 light years. When the evil spirit of a god entered Zhang Xiaoyao's inner universe, it was equivalent to putting a vicious shark into a fish tank. If he was not careful, the inner universe might be shattered by the recoil force of the evil spirit of a god. If that happened, not only would Zhang Xiaoyao's cultivation be completely destroyed, but his life would also be in danger. This was also the reason why the Qing Di had warned him previously. At this moment, in the eyes of outsiders, Zhang Xiaoyao was covered in blood, and all kinds of chaotic auras were surging around his body. His aura was extremely chaotic. It was as if there were 2 gods fighting inside his body. And Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were sometimes clear and sometimes releasing endless demonic thoughts. One thought was a god, and the other was a demon. If the phantom of the Qing Di could not suppress the evil spirit of a god, Zhang Xiaoyao might even be tainted by the demonic thoughts and become a demon lord. Cough. Zhang Xiaoyao's condition was extremely bad. Blood was dripping from his mouth, and his body was cracking. He looked extremely terrifying. All of his attention was focused on stabilizing the inner verse. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao was undoubtedly in his worst state. This is a good chance. At this moment, a figure dashed toward Zhang Xiaoyao, whose body was on the verge of collapse, like a bolt of lightning. It was Jiyu Tiezi. Jiyu Tiezi, how dare you? At this moment, even Meng Zhon was enraged. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he shouted at Jiyu Tiezi. Zhang Xiaoyao had sacrificed himself, using his own flesh and blood to suppress the evil spirit of a god. And Jiyu Tiezi had actually chosen to attack at this moment. This was truly infuriating. Jiyu Tiezi, you're courting death. Zhang Lingcang, Lord Grim, and the other's eyes were also filled with coldness. Unfortunately, this scene was too sudden. No one had expected Jiyu Tiezi to suddenly attack, and they could not save him in time. Even Long Yao had a look of disdain in her eyes. As for Ling Yang, her heart trembled. Xian Yu's heart skipped a beat. She could not help but take a step forward, wanting to stop him. It was as if she could see her brother about to die. The winner takes all. As long as I can kill you and obtain the heavenly crown, I don't care about the flood. Jiyu Tiezi let out an arrogant laugh. There was even a trace of madness in it. He raised his hand and slapped Zhang Xiaoyao's chest.